we're not going to be able to vote on any resolutions until we get the full board meeting, the full membership here, or at least a few more. But also, I appreciate everyone coming out on a Tuesday evening, so we want to make sure we keep the meeting moving forward. So we're going to go ahead and kick off with the agenda. I'm Reggie Thomas, Chair of Transportation. This is Devin Chu, who's the co-chair of Transportation. Thank you, everybody, for coming. So we have a pretty packed agenda, so we're just sort of fair warning in the beginning. We're going to be a little bit harder on folks in terms of the amount of comments and the amount of questions and just making sure that we're plugging along. So to the extent that you have anything that you would like to repeat that somebody else said, I'm going to ask you to refrain and just simply just acknowledge that you agree with somebody and move on to your next point. Just go ahead and just kick off. We're going to have Officer Morrell and Officer Lee from NYPD come to talk to us about pedestrian cyclist safety on Lafayette. I'm really happy that they're here. So if anything, I'll just have you guys come up to the front if you guys want to. Yeah, come up to the front and talk about your presentation, some of the things you've noticed, in your time to being NCCOs, etc. Great, thanks. Go for it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Officer Morrell from the 5th Precinct. This is my partner, Officer Lee. We are your neighborhood coordination officers. We deal with primarily issues within the 5th Precinct. There's something that passes over Broadway, which is for the majority of Community Board 1. Then you would have to speak to you can send an email to us, which we're going to leave some of our business cards here. You can email us, give us a phone call, and we can send that information forward to the neighborhood coordination officers. Your precinct should most likely be the first. We have a little piece of Community Board 1, which we also appreciate. As neighborhood coordination officers, our mission is to listen to the community and hear what they are feeling, and we need to hopefully find positive solutions to their issues in a way that's different from what other people may believe the police officers have done, which is summons or lock people up. It's more of a thinking position where we are able to hopefully find positive solutions for you. So as NCOs that we've been for approximately a year now, we've been listening to the community. Sometimes they contact us by phone, email, or coming to the precinct. So this is a little bit of what we've been getting from the community. So we're studying the area of Lafayette over here. And we've been getting a bunch of complaints, 311 complaints, over here in this area, which is pretty much right here in front of 1 Center going up to, say, Worth or a little more to Canal, which is that the bicyclists are not getting enough space or their dedicated bike lane or their field protected. Does anyone bicycle around here? Or has family that likes to cycle, right? Or does anyone drive a car that needs parking? All right, so we hope that this would be a positive solution for you. Okay?
I got run over by a bicycle.
So, what are we getting? 311 complaints from the community. We're getting complaints from the management itself that says that sometimes they're getting blocked in, that they can't even get their vehicles out because there's another vehicle that's double parked. The legalization of congested pricing in Manhattan looks like there might be less cars coming in. But pretty much everyone seems to have business in Community Board 1. You gotta go to jury duty. You gotta go to your court. You're gonna get a new court, a new jail. That's gonna be a lot higher. I don't know if everyone advocated for that, but it's gonna happen.
Touchy subject.
Right? I'm trying to not touch it and get out. Then you also have people that have to do business deliveries, right? Some people have to drop off their kids at school. So you're still going to get a lot of people here. The legalization of electric bikes. If it does become legal that the e-bikes are now safe enough to be on the street and they're not considered a motor vehicle, then you have more people riding around here very fast. So we need to find a way that's a reliable roadway that could increase the safety of cyclists within Community Board 1 that are riding. Also, people looking for alternatives to MTA, right? We kind of want better transit. We want to be able to get places maybe that would inspire us to use a bike more often. Not enough parking for you. It's something you need. It's something we're advocating for. And it's something that we've heard for a long time from Community Board 1. So the proposal is, right? I'm sorry, I'm kind of cheesy.
That's okay. It's a fancy.
I'm a little cheesy. All right, so it'll be a dedicated bike lane. Right, so it's going to go from Grand Street, that's Community Board 2. But once we start at Canal Street, this is you. So it'll go to the heart of where it needs to be. A dedicated, protected bike lane that goes from Lafayette on Canal all the way down to Brooklyn Bridge. we've had about 60 bicyclists, or more than close to 70 in 2000. That wasn't us.
You're the only calm ones.
In 2017, I believe we had close to 70 accidents, and then last year we had about 10 or more less.
I didn't hear what the 70.
70 accidents, you said?
Yeah, bicycle accidents within the 5th precinct, the confines of the 5th precinct. So I'm not adding the 1st precinct. I only have knowledge of the 5th. We have about 10 less last year. We don't know what we're projecting for 2019.
Is that vehicle bicycle?
Yes.
What about
Well,
bicycle
Just
pedestrian?
outside
Yes,
here on my way.
that's kind of as well. So for
Do you separate those out? Because that's a real important distinction to
No,
us.
it's all put into one. So
That's a
if
problem.
it's vehicle, person, or person on person, or vehicle on person, it gets added. It's a total. But if there's a needed breakdown, we can definitely come back and bring that, because we have someone that does those numbers. So this will continue, right? So Grand, it has a dedicated bike lane, a protected dedicated bike lane on Grand Street. You could come from the west side, up until pretty much Lafayette. After that, it kind of just continues on, protected. But there's nothing to go south for Community Board 1.
Excuse me, on Grand Street, that's like by the Chinatown part, from the Lancey to Christie. I remember they had put one in a while ago, and I think, because I did some shopping over there, and there was so many almost accidents because there was just no space for everything. I thought they took that one away because, like, the shop owners, the fish people, and the food stands were complaining. Do you know, I'm talking about the right place that you guys are talking? Where Grand Street kind of like, it's like that little thing before it gets to like,
I mean, Christie Street.
yeah, and it was like, there was like the deliveries, they couldn't stop, and then like it's like a madhouse, and so I think they took that, didn't they take that bike lane away from that street?
It doesn't go more east than Christie. So anything west of Christie, you have to dedicate bike lane. After that, it's a shared bike lane. So it means you could get into an accident.
Because there was problems on that one block
Yeah.
for a while, and I thought they had made it a little better by taking that away, because like I said, I'm there a lot.
They did have problems over there, but that's why the dedicated bike lane was put there, to kind of help mitigate that issue. But now they have a dedicated green space on the floor that's green, so it's safe for people to go down, or safer for people to go down.
So, Mitch, I'm glad you asked that question. Just ask everybody moving forward, just if we can wait for the officer to finish the presentation, then we'll... No, all good.
No, so this is the primary focus for us, Community Board 1, right? As people are coming south on Lafayette and they're approaching this area, well, anything south of it is pretty much you don't have a space to bicycle safely, where someone's most likely going to open the door to you, or maybe someone's, the passenger, because we also get accidents where the passenger is the one that opened the door by mistake because they don't have the mirror to look back. Sometimes it's also a delivery guy who's just walking out, exiting his door. Sometimes it's people that are walking into their space and they don't have that space. So once we go down here, right, this would now change. Well, the proposal is, or the idea. This is not possible without Community Board 1. You are the decision makers and you're the ones that make things happen. We're just like small advocates for the community. So this will now be moved to this space, and this would be moved over here. So over here where vehicles like to double park, which is your bike lane, your shared bike lane, it would actually be protected now. So you see there's enough space for still your 2 lanes and the park for federal parking. You could still have your space here and protect people and have the people park their vehicles over here. So this would be your dedicated bike lane. Also, when you're going south over here, this was the proposal or the work that DOT was doing, was to find a way that people could go northbound on Center Street. This is where we're going to get to your parking. If we are able to squeeze this, put this together, right, where you'll have your dedicated bike lane, eliminate this, which is the idea of putting a bike lane here, we'll have space for your 2 lanes on both sides and your dedicated bike lane. I'm not sure if I apologize, I don't have a image of going northbound on Center, which separates right over here, Center and Lafayette. If we go north, you see how you have the courthouses on your left-hand side, a bunch of them? Since that was a proposed bike lane that's not done yet, you could turn that into parking. And you'll have at least 30 to 40 spots within Community Board 1 that you didn't have before. Which would allow residents and people that live in the area to have the parking that they deserve. At least it's 30 spots. And it's finding more spots for people. Now, we don't know what could happen if someone comes up with something on this side, which was one of our sergeant's idea of maybe doing like a angle parking, which is the idea for angle parking on this side. It will be angle parking on this side, but they could fit at least 30 to 40. I'm not a land surveyor, I'm not sure about how that works, how many spots you'll get. I'm just saying, I don't make those rules. But that's an idea. And then that, maybe you could do something here, but I'm not sure. I don't deal with that. But the whole emphasis that we want you to know is that if something, if you want security for the courthouses, and someone had that idea to do something, it will be done. So we just want to let people know that because we live in the day we live in and we're 2019, New York City moves forward, we're stronger and we're better, and we should always have the open mind of we're moving forward. You need the parking spots, we hope we can get that. So thank you.
So I'm going to start with the general statement. I'll see if Devin has questions that will open up to committee members. So I think for anyone who is familiar with this area, especially coming to 1 Center Street constantly for meetings, I think at least in the 3 years I've been in the community board, every handful of times when I'm walking into the building, you see a near accident with a bicyclist and a vehicle. So there are a number of interventions that probably can and should be
Are
made.
you saying a bicycle with a standing vehicle?
What's that?
I'm sorry, the near accident with a bicycle and a vehicle?
And a vehicle, right.
How about a bicycle and a person?
Oh, no, right.
That's what, okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I want to bring that up.
Yeah,
because
totally.
I've almost been the subject of a near hit.
Yeah.
But,
Sorry,
okay,
yeah,
go
we'll
on,
get
sorry, I
to, yeah,
interrupted
so,
you.
no, it's
Yeah.
okay. So to say that this is clearly an issue, but also I think one of the benefits of having a neighborhood coordinating officer in general, something that's been implemented was, for instances like this, where because you're dedicated to an area, you're seeing everything holistically.
Yes.
Not just on crime, but on things like congestion and quality of life complaints. So all in all, this is a good thing that the officers are here saying, this is something we're observing in your community, and we're here to kind of propose some solutions or ideas on that. Devin, do you have any questions?
And it's one thing. Do you know if DOT has done a study on Lafayette?
They have. Unfortunately, I did not have access to that. I didn't do enough research in that point to get that report and do the studies of their map. They did do a study. I don't know why they specifically made it a shared bike lane instead of protected, if they already did it on Grand. But the bike routes have always been in phases, and I think it was a phase that has not been touched yet, because they're still probably thinking of what they want to do on Center. For some reason, from 1 Center all the way up to, I'd say, pretty much Cleveland Place in Spring, Center Street goes all the way up, and there was an intention to do a bike lane. These dots over here is the proposed bike lane that hasn't been implemented, and this is what could be your bike route. Your bike route could be here, and this could be space and parking. If we could possibly free up space, you won't have that much bottleneck congestion when you're trying to go northbound. And there's always these cop cars and all that other stuff blocking that. That could maybe mitigate something, or at least find a solution to get you uptown faster than normal.
So do Tammy, Elizabeth, Mark.
So you said that you think DOT has studied it.
To some extent.
So if I understand correctly, though, the first step to getting anything done like that is DOT has to
Yep.
study it.
Absolutely.
Secondly, is there any conversation about north-south bike lanes, so that the bike lanes wouldn't necessarily be on Center and Lafayette, that there would be two-way bike lanes?
Yes. Well, I agree with what you're saying, because that's what we're trying to pitch. If this is right, because you see how these routes all work. If we're able to use Lafayette as the bike route, which would be the protected bike lane, north and south, you don't need the Center Street at all to go north or south. Because people are always going to seem to find a way to go up and down the street, but we're hoping that Lafayette would be the main artery to kind of go nuts.
And my third comment is, a lot of the times what you see about, for example, I almost got run over pursuant to what Elizabeth says, trying to cross the street to get here. All the cars are stopped, but the bicycles don't follow any of the traffic laws, which is a major cause of some of the accidents that you're talking about. Yes, they're weaving in and out. If a car was doing that, the car would get pulled over. Yes, they're not stopping, or they pause at a stop sign or a traffic light and then blow through it if they choose.
Wrong way.
Or going the wrong way on a street. So I think that no matter how many routes we take, we can make everything car free, and you're still going to have incidents if that ends up being a case, because there's no enforcement. It's part and parcel of the problem that we have with other areas downtown, is until there's, I mean, the only enforcement that's like chick-chock in this neighborhood is if you're parked too long at a meter in Tribeca. God knows you're getting a ticket there, but otherwise the bicycles don't get pulled and ticketed. And other than on the greenway, I have never seen any in the streets them being ticketed or any enforcement, which I think is part and parcel to part of the problems that we have down here. And I think whatever plans we make has to dovetail with that kind of a conversation, because it is a wild free-for-all. And with the addition of e-bikes, there's no
God help
cause
us.
for that.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I mean, that was what I was gonna ask you, what are you doing about enforcement for, bicycle pedestrian safety? I mean, like Tammy said, I have been almost hit numerous times, everyone's shaking their head around this room. This woman has been hit by a bicycle. I mean, I'm glad you're here, because you're responsible for enforcement, so, or I think you are for cyclists, right? I mean, but again,
No,
they don't feel
traffic
like they're
is.
bound by the rules of the road often. I mean, some do, but most of the time I find that they just go right
Correct.
through the red light. So this is a huge, huge problem, I think, in our neighborhood, and I think it's something, I don't know what you can do, I mean, what do you guys have up your sleeve?
For
And to Elizabeth's
for
point, could
us.
you talk about some of the, both the challenge, like A, of course, what you're doing,
Yeah.
but B, what are the challenges you have, and then third, what if any solutions that you'd recommend that we could help you advocate for?
It's it's very, what we view as pedestrian safety is the same as bicyclist safety, it's the same as vehicle safety. We do enforcement, but it's difficult, it's not always that good. When you're on foot and the guy on the bike just goes right by you, and then how am I gonna catch that guy and not cause danger to someone else? So it's sometimes hard. The law-abiding bicyclists stop, some don't. And then it's a risk of how we approach them. So what we try to do as NCOs is a holistic approach, which is hand out flyers, let people know what's going on, and not always get them on the enforcement, because enforcement doesn't always change people's patterns of behavior. It's kind of a way to let people know, look, we hope you stop at the light, this is the information, you're responsible to follow all the rules and roads. Bicyclists are required to follow the VTL as well. So they need to be aware of that. And if people don't know, then they will say they don't know. So we have to always educate people,
They don't know.
about that. That's their defense. That's their defense. I'm not a lawyer. I don't
Crazy, and
but,
you can't follow them and fine them or something, I mean.
We do.
What about
We
the
do.
red?
And I
red-
promise you,
yeah.
I'm not saying that we don't. We go as far as we safely can. But if they're weaving out of traffic, which a lot of them do, because most of the people that are getting the summonses are not, like you. It's like guys that are doing deliveries, guys that are messengers, bicycle messengers, and things like etc., which have a time sensitivity, and they're not looking to stop and get a ticket. Nobody likes tickets over here.
So I could, if I don't have a car, but if I can just drive away when the cop's trying to pull me over, they're not gonna,
It's off track.
No.
Yeah, sorry.
We're off track.
Yeah.
Okay,
no.
I'll
So,
wait.
sorry, can we
I think,
segue
you know.
to Mark, and then we're gonna call him?
Yeah, because I would just like to say that, I'm not saying that we don't do the enforcement, but I have to think holistically in the sense for the guys that don't stop. So sometimes you're going to get those hard heads and sometimes you don't. But we're trying our best to get the cyclists what they need, and at the same time let people know the other issues that they face. So my intent is not to say, that I'm going to write 100 more tickets to every bicyclist I see. That's not the approach that we're looking for.
Why not? Sorry, I'm trying to be respectful, but
Yeah.
why not? I mean, if you start ticketing people, then people may stop doing that.
No. That's what we do. But some that want to do it, okay, I'll just put it this way. We're doing the best that we can, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, I'm just putting it out there that it's a big concern in our community, so, do what you want with that, and hopefully, you'll think about it, and maybe,
Thank
there
you.
are other things you can.
Mark?
I have a few things, but just to piggyback off of what you said, I mean, when stings are set up for vehicles, you have one cop there, and then you say, all right, go see the guy down there. I know you can't chase him, but I have one, get on the radio, stop the guy in the red hat, who's 2 blocks down there, just simple, you've done it before. So the problem is the enforcement and it's not some, it's most bicyclists that don't obey the rules of the road and then pretend they don't know and then yell at pedestrians when they're in the wrong. And I know it's going to maybe take someone else to get killed, and I hope your police union advocates against e-bikes, because God help us when that thing comes. I mean,
Sorry, I
but-
just want
but,
to keep
yeah.
it going if you have a question about
Yeah,
that.
I have just a couple of comments also. The carve out of pedestrian bicycle accidents, can you send that information to Diana?
Yeah.
You said you could do that? Okay. Now, anything in this plan, is it gonna eliminate any vehicular lanes?
No.
Will the lanes be smaller?
No.
So nothing like that will happen. All right, because and the thing is enforcement. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And you talk about congestion. I mean, like you said, you're 2 minutes over your parking meter. They're snooping around, but you have an Uber idiot double parked for an hour and backing up everyone's traffic, and they're just sitting there and nothing happens. And you guys got to enforce that. But maybe it's, I think, call me conspiracy, but I think it's purposeful to make traffic worse so they could pass
So we hear
consistent
generally
pricing.
enforcement's an issue. Okay. Hear you about enforcement.
Believe me.
Mitch.
Well, I think he's next.
Oh, sorry, Colin, my bad. Sorry, Colin and Mitch, my bad.
I just want to reconfirm, in your obviously professional opinion as public safety officers, does this plan make pedestrians safer?
Everyone.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Mitch.
Just to give a specific, not to, like I said, to follow what you said, not to repeat what they said.
Thank you.
Specific location, right downstairs, the bicycle's coming off the Brooklyn Bridge, coming up, I guess this is Center Street right here. I would say just from, I don't need to do a study, at least 85% of the time they're running through the red light, and especially when we can leave the meetings, it's like dark, and I've, almost accidents every time I come to one of the meetings. So downstairs is one of the spots, the light right in front here, coming off the Brooklyn Bridge, is where most of them don't stop, at least right here. The parking spots, and I say this, I don't have a car, I take public transportation, but just not to be selfish myself, the 30 or 40 parking spots that you're looking to get, are those going to be meters?
I don't do those proposals.
Okay, because if they're, like I said, if they're not, then it doesn't really serve 95% of the community, because you'd have, and even that being said, unless things change, and I don't see them changing, I would assume they'll be taken by the placards. So it's good on paper, and you did a great job presenting it, but that's not going to give more spots to the neighborhood. And one other thing I wanted to ask you, I think e-bikes are a great thing, but if they become legal, would they be enforced the same as cars? As far as rules of the road, ticketing the same, not like bicycles, but would they be enforced citation-wise?
Oh, yes. For now, even bicyclists they have to follow the same traffic vehicle laws too.
But it doesn't happen because admitted you can't just give everybody a ticket like car, but for the e-bikes, if they become legal,
But
do
that's
you know if
why-
it's coming down from your department, if they're gonna be enforced the same as cars?
Well, that's why I said the potential legalization of e-bikes. I do not know if it will become law. It's just, it may become, which may increase the ridership along Community Board 1. Also, to answer your other question about the Brooklyn Bridge and people breaking that light, the rules of the light, we have a lot of tourists. And not all the tourists may know the way we proceed. And even though it's a different country, maybe they just don't understand or don't,
When
so
I'm standing
I
at
want
the
to.
red light, I have a green light, that has nothing to do with tourism.
I understand, but I'm saying that you're getting people from all over, from different states, from different countries that just want to go from where they want to go. So that would once again be the.
I'm just giving you a heads up that
the heads up.
I'm not-
that's the
Yes.
light
Stop
down
buying
here
the
is the
red and
spot to
green.
check.
All right, so we're going to open it up to questions from everybody, just to clarify, if you can ask specific questions about this plan. We've spent way too many hours already this year kvetching about bikes and e-bikes especially, so yes, I know you especially want to.
Okay, I just had a quick question in terms of these dedicated lanes, and intersections and traffic lights. Is the expectation that this protected lane protects them to just keep going, or that they would, that is kind of the same sort of established, here's a crosswalk, you must stop, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Because it feels like when you have a protected lane, saying, here's a protected bike lane, now you have no freedom to just go.
The majority of the protected bike lanes have a light that has a bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be a red bicycle, a yellow bicycle, a green bicycle, and like that, you know that it's specifically for people that are riding bicycles to understand. Look, that light, this light are both important, and you need to follow the rules of the road. So that's the idea of
To
being
reinforce it.
protected to continue that all the way south. You know.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Just on the enforcement thing, you're saying that people aren't, don't know the law. As a judge once told me, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So, I mean, they're like, I'm just saying, if you enforce it, if you give tickets, don't listen to the complaints about that.
Can I just make like one?
Sorry, Mitch, sorry, just, we have to keep it moving, and I think Betty in the back had a question, sorry,
Thank
sorry,
you very
Mitch.
much for your presentation. I find this very good news. I've never had a problem with a bicyclist, and I'm amongst them all the time. But I want to say from my experience working in other countries, like in Vietnam, the more vehicles, the more bicycles there are, the more they conform to the rules, just like cars do. Because there's a group of them going, it's not one person on their own trying to figure out where to go because they have nowhere to be in particular. So I think your enforcement problems in many ways will go down as it's a more designated bike lane or somewhere for them to do. My experience tells me that's going to get better. I also want to say that I am so grateful you said that there are people who pay attention and those that don't pay attention, whether they're in cars, whether they're walking, or whether they're bicycling. The pedestrians are my biggest nightmare. I mean, I find them the most inconsiderate people on the planet, and yet they'd never see it that way. They're just kind of walking around, walking in front of me. They don't care if I fall over. They're just, a lot of people aren't paying attention, and that's just proud place.
Thank you. That being said, are there any pressing questions? Yes, Tammy.
Timeline. We've not talked about timeline. So if you had your druthers and you said, we really want to start moving forward with this, what is a projected timeline?
Us.
I think these are just observations.
Right.
They're not, this is not an official NYPD or DOT or city proposal. This is just merely them coming to say, hey, we're your local NCOs, here's something we're observing, something that we think would be a good solution, and they wanted to brief us on what they thought was the solution. So to be clear, this is not an official DOT proposal. Hopefully that answers that question. There isn't a timeline because this isn't an official proposal.
There's no resolution.
So what is the
Yeah,
next
so-
step? Because
so, yeah.
it said possible resolution.
Yeah, so
and
yeah,
that's-
my question.
right. So my recommendation, I think Devin would agree. Our recommendation is that this just be a report to the full board that our local MCOs came, they provided some information. I think we have some follow-up to do with DOT to find out exactly, for example, the study that the officers had already previously mentioned, what their long-term plans are, what if any timelines are already in the pipeline, so we can do some more homework on it.
Okay.
So that'll be our recommendation.
So put a question into DOT.
Yeah, so
what
yeah,
the
you-
status is.
Yep, absolutely.
This week or whatever.
Yeah. And yeah, sorry.
But we'll try to reach out to DOT and pitch this idea and follow up with it as well.
Great.
But we're also going to leave some cards, so if there's any more information or questions, you can email us or on our department phone numbers.
You have Diana's email to
Yes,
send that
yes,
info?
yes, we have.
Maybe, like I said, you can't do 100 tickets like a day, that's not practical. Maybe like once or twice a year, just do it at a few intersections, the ticket blitz, and then that word will get out for a while, and it might make everything safer, but, because I don't want them to be besieged by tickets, but if you can suggest that to maybe your superiors, just like maybe once or twice a year at
No,
certain
I
spots.
definitely, I would like to clarify the point of saying, some people are going to break those rules. I want to make it clear, we do bicycle enforcement, there's a lot of it, but we do struggle just like other people in vehicles,
Sure.
make those turns or break the rules, and we're not trying to hammer people all the time, we just want to re-educate. And for us here, we're not here to make the formal proposal, we're just bringing ideas. We're not here to implement anything or say we demand this. It's just to kind of present what we see to Community Board 1 and see if they like it or not. You know, we're not into
It's
know,
really valuable that comes from
Yeah.
The difference
Especially-
between
Sorry.
the other
Mark,
countries
sorry,
and
sorry,
here
Mark, I'm
is
sorry, I really gotta move on to the next.
no matters here.
Sorry.
Over there
So-
they have it.
Just want to thank the officers again for coming. This is exactly what we hope with the NCO model, is that you can come in and share your observations. I would say this is not something NYPD officers would normally do, so we want to thank you for doing that, so thank you so much for coming. Great, thank you.
We love the fact that you came, don't
Yeah.
be afraid to come back.
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thanks
so
for coming.
next on the agenda will be the TD5 Borough Bike Tour. Thank you again, officers. Thank you, Sharon. So to preface, so this is an item I think many folks in the community are very familiar with over the amount of years. It's also something that I know that there's been a lot of agitas, if you will, to put it lightly, regarding the event for the past number of years, including quite a lot of noise complaints. And there have been some neighbors who went as far as to cry hysterically about the event. To be blunt about it. But we appreciate Sharon, who's the Director of Community Outreach from the race, or from the bike ride, to come to share sort of updates about this. I do understand that last year was a bit better than prior years, but it's still not where we need it to be. So we're happy that Sharon's here to talk about the plans and to talk about some of the changes they made last year, how it went, and then things we can all do to work together for improvement. So I'll invite Sharon to do the spiel.
Do we have resolutions, the quality of life resolutions from that brought up all the issues?
We'll grab it.
Some of those people
Dana
on
will
that
grab it,
committee.
yeah.
And if I could just take a moment, I just wanted to suggest that Bike New York can also partner with the community board to offer bike safety classes. And thank you so much for your comment. I was in Tokyo for 2 weeks, about 3 weeks ago, in which biking is very much a big deal there. And I noticed that it's all in the behavior. It's in the behavior as cyclists, pedestrians, as well as motorists. We do see the streetscapes here as complementary in the sense that we could have a number of activities take place on the streetscape at the same time. And so there is success, as he pointed out in other parts of the world, and we do have bike safety classes. I've partnered with other community boards in the past to offer, and more specifically the Transportation Committee, by the way, to offer these classes for free. And they focus on knowing the rules of the road. But I'm sorry. I will tell you that the classes have been successful not only for cyclists but also pedestrians who are interested in finding out, you know, what it is they need to know to navigate the environment as well. So we do that for free. We have the instructors to do that. The second thing that I wanted to mention was I do have videos, but I do see that your agenda is packed. So I want to leave it to you guys to determine whether or not you want to see the video. If you don't,
Yeah,
that's
it's all right.
okay.
Don't worry about it.
All right.
We'll jump right into the map and yeah.
This is what I'm thinking. So I want to begin by saying thank you, thank you, thank you. You allowed Bike New York to incorporate your suggestions and recommendations, and as a result, you gave me the opportunity to bring balloons. I have to be honest with you. I chose the colors very carefully.
Sharon, I'm sorry to interrupt, and I love your joy. You always do this every year.
Yeah, thank you.
We're
Okay,
50 minutes in and on the second item, so.
I promise
I
I'll
appreciate-
pick it
yeah.
up. But the
Thank you.
colors are the official colors of New York City, because Bike New York is committed to the city, and we're also committed to our communities. So, getting right down to business. We had last year several meetings with the Quality of Life Committee, and the Quality of Life Committee put together a number of recommendations that Diana is actually making copies of the resolution. So I just want to tell you, I just want to list for you some of the overall general recommendations. The first was that we do extensive outreach, 4-5 blocks in every in the radius of where the start stage is located, which is Franklin and Church, and that we put extra emphasis on doing outreach to apartment buildings, which we did. The flyers that you have in your hand are from last year. I brought those with me because they also indicate another item that was in the resolution, which is that we provide a telephone number, a day-of telephone number for anyone who is interested in complaining about the noise level. So, I want to remind, there are a lot of people who aren't here. However, we did have our sound person here who said that he hears the concerns of the community and that they will reduce the sound decibels, which was done. And he was on the start stage. We have him coming again because we received a great deal of accolades for the work that we did to make sure two things. One, that we were responsive to the community, and two, that we implement all of the resolutions. And so I have one is that we reduce speaker length. Second, that we add speakers to both sides of the street. That we reduce the volume. That we reduce the length of amplified sound. We also and also that we remove one of the bands, that we play a different type of music, by the way. That was a big deal. And also that we reduce the number overall of announcements. So overall, we did all those things. Overall, we did all those things. And as a result, we did receive a great deal of thank yous, not only from the community board, but community board members, but also individuals from the outside. Now, we've already had some discussion. I'd like to open up the floor. We can, if that is okay with the chair, but I would ask personally, Bike New York has made a great effort to make sure that we listen to the community and that we incorporate what you would like for us to do. I would request no name calling. Okay? No name calling.
Yep, that's fair. All right, so I'll kick it off, Sharon. So let me say, I mean this with all due respect to you on this.
Sure.
I've been on the community board for a couple of years. And I think this is the first year where I think we had some level of positive moving forward. I'm a little concerned that we're patting ourselves on the back too much, that this is the fourth year that I've been here, and this has kind of been in the resolution every year. And while we appreciate it, I don't think we shouldn't be overly patting ourselves on the back that it took this many requests to have made some improvements. So listen, I personally appreciate it, especially because this wasn't quality of life, and now this is my time this is our time as transportation to handle this, but I just kind of have to say that at the outset, we still have a lot of improvements to be made, and I appreciate you, and I agree with you. I think a lot of people are still agitated. I can already tell from the crowd, folks are agitated about this, so I want to ask everyone to keep this as respectful as humanly possible. Tell us what your concerns are about the event from last year. We'll incorporate it into the resolution this year, and we'll want to work with you to make sure that this is a success moving forward. The other thing I will let everyone know is I did talk with Jeff and Pat, who are the chairs of the committees in prior years. They did appreciate too, Sharon, that changes were made, but they did emphasize that there are a lot of neighbors who want to come out at least still express whatever concerns or whatever
Sure,
additional
that
improvements need
makes
to be made.
sense.
So we will incorporate that. So
Yeah.
I'll stop talking, and then Deborah,
That
do you have any
makes sense.
questions?
I just want to add that my position is relatively new at Bike New York. So the reason why Bike New York is here is because I began to do the initial outreach to the community board. I came to the community board. It is important that we address the needs of the community. So,
Appreciate it.
I just want to give you an update about that.
Great, appreciate that. Devin?
Nothing.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Committee members. What's that? Mitch?
Okay. One thing she said that was true, there was big improvement. So I'll start off again by trying to not accept lies in my face by saying she's not telling you the whole truth. Number one, she's been here and she has a beautiful presentation. This is the third year that she's been here, so she's not new. She knows the deal. Number two, there was great improvement, but when she says that there is 100% compliance, that is an out-and-out falsehood.
So walk us through just what are the things that...
The race starts where she said it starts.
Yep.
But then, because there's so many bikes and that's a great thing. But they start lining up, they have to start lining up like a good deal before.
Right.
So the speakers are not, like on here, the footprint of six speakers will be on Church between Franklin Street and Leonard Street. And I know that the bikers have to hear the announcements,
Yeah.
but they were just supposed to put some speakers on some corners, like I think were Reed and Dwayne, but then they wound up between like Thomas, there's like Thomas and Worth, and I went down and saw it for myself, and I took some video and I presented it last year. They put up speakers half mid-block also, so besides being speakers on each corner, there was speakers in the middle of the block also, so there was, it's just factually, it's not an opinion, it's not agree to disagree, it's just not, everything she's saying is not true.
So Mitch, just to clarify something you said, sorry to interrupt, I just want to make sure I understand. So there's supposed to be 6 speakers on Church between Franklin and Leonard
Okay,
Street.
I can't address that because
Yeah.
I'm not up that far.
Yep.
But there was more than the speakers that we had verbally agreed between Dwayne and Worth.
Okay.
That's a fact. And there were speakers mid-block because that Thomas Street is like a half a block and it's a long block before you get to Worth.
Okay.
That was one thing. If they did everything that they agreed upon, everything would be great. But I would say that they made big improvements, but when I hear 100%, that's just not the truth.
So Mitch, just I want to distill exactly what you said. So according to the agreement, and Sharon, correct me wrong, there were supposed to be speakers on Church between Franklin and Leonard, and there were a total of 6. Mitch, what
I'm not disputing that.
No, I'm saying, what Mitch, what you're saying is that they were mid-block and they shouldn't have been,
No,
or...
they were farther south.
They were farther, so they actually didn't fall in line within those
The
streets.
speakers went out to Dwayne.
Okay, all right.
And I can understand that because the bicycles have to hear the announcements because they're there.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so there wasn't compliance with
there
that
was like
component.
almost double the amount of speakers,
Okay.
or 1/3 more than what was supposed to be. It was just supposed to be like on the corner at a low volume, and there were speakers mid-block. And that's why I got upset before, because you just can't tell me it's raining outside when I'm looking outside. And I went downstairs, and there's another neighbor here that she had some other things well, maybe you can ask her,
Yeah,
because she
so-
saw different things.
No, that's helpful, Mitch. So Sharon, just to clarify what Mitch said. So
Yes.
my understanding of the event last year was that there were supposed to be 6 speakers on Church between Franklin and Leonard.
Yes.
There was no specific notation as to where on Church it was supposed to be, except it was supposed to be between those streets. Is that my
Yes.
understanding?
Yes.
Okay, and as Mitch said, it looks as though speakers were placed further south as far as
There's
Duane
additional
Street.
speakers for
So there are additional speakers. Do you know anything about that?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not believe that there were additional speakers.
Okay.
No. Were there speakers south of
Franklin.
Franklin?
I'll have to find that. Jenna, were
You
there,
know,
were there
that's
speakers
what,
south?
you just can't, you know, I'm sorry, you
Wait a
gotta
minute,
lie to
can
my
I-
face.
Mitch, listen, we're gonna get it all out, that's fine, but just, we'll keep moving. So, sorry, one sec. Sharon has a colleague who might know the
Jenna?
answer.
Pat and Jeff were here.
Were,
Hi, my name's Jenna McLaughlin. I'm a representative from Bike New York as well, and I recognize some of the faces here, so good to see you guys again. I was not aware that they put speakers further south. They were only supposed to be 6 speakers between Church and Franklin Street, 3 on either side. So if there were, I'm gonna go back to our sound company who was out there last year and ask them if there were additionals that put out, and obviously scold them for it because that was not in the agreement that I put with you guys. And then make sure that that there are no additional speakers put out on blocks past.
Perfect.
That's fine.
Perfect. Great, thank you. All right, next, any other committee members before we go to the public? Mark, and then,
The issue with the announcements, and are you using the bullhorn still? Yes or no?
okay, so just for clarification, I am not at the start area, just for clarification.
Jenna, are you at the start area?
However, Jenna is there, so that's
Great.
why I'm
awesome. Jenna, could you answer
referring
that?
to her.
Yes, so our marshals and volunteers that are down in that area are given bullhorns in the morning to help direct riders. However, we have messaged to them not to use them until 9 a.m. because that is the official time of when amplified sound can be used. Because we do not have eyes on every single marshal that is issued a bullhorn, if they are using it before 9 a.m., I apologize for that. We will continue to message them as when they are given that equipment to not use it until 9 a.m. They will just have to use their voices, so there could be potential shouting. But we will reaffirm to them not to use the bullhorn until 9
But so
a.m.
you're gonna comply with the administrative code as far as hours with all amplified equipment?
There will still be the amplified sound at the start stage, and those 6 speakers between Franklin and Leonard.
What times?
Prior to, our first start is
7:30.
7:30, so it's
7:15.
7:15 is when our first announcements for that start base begin.
The speakers did put in-
And Jenna, sorry, how many people have bullhorns generally?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we can find out.
Okay, because even though I think we appreciate that there are 6 speakers, 3 on each side, if there are 2 people with bullhorns, that
Right.
would defeat the entire purpose, to be blunt about it. All right, Elizabeth?
So just hearing the few minor issues that we just brought up, bullhorns, speakers.
Yep.
It just seems to be that there may be an issue with enforcement, and my suggestion is maybe you get somebody like New York to be there to enforce these conditions that we set out. 3 speakers on each side, between Franklin and where was it, Franklin and where?
Yes.
I mean, because it doesn't seem like anyone from Bike New York, so we can talk all we want about what we're gonna do to make this better, but if there's no one there enforcing it, it doesn't really matter. So maybe you want someone there to, to make sure there are only 3 speakers, to make sure no one's using the bullhorns before 9 a.m., right?
Actually, I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Kylie Haggerty. I'm the Associate Director of Events at Bike New York, and part of my job here is to help make sure that we are actually
Good, so that's a new
enforcing.
thing?
Yeah,
This is
so it's a new position. I'm here, but yeah, I was not on board last year. I'm here, and me and our start manager, Lacey, will be going through and actually making sure that we.
This is the first time I've seen her, so that's the truth.
So, no, it's good, it's a good thing. We're getting more people from New York. Okay, Tammy, and then the neighbor side.
So I guess one of my questions is, this is clearly a hot button issue. It's not going away on either side. Improvements are great, but the community board also asked for you to consider other starting locations, quite frankly, because it's not like the residents are going anywhere. In fact, I mean, Luis can tell you, we got thousands more people coming in the neighborhood every year. So with that thought in mind, the community board has time and time again asked, are there any other starting locations that you can look at considering? So here we are coming back again, now 2019, and it doesn't sound like you've even remotely looked at other areas to start off. That we're just trying to mitigate circumstances again.
It's a much larger conversation to move the start line for sure, because it does impact the additional 40 miles, and we go through all 5 boroughs. So it is a conversation that has to include DOT and NYPD and the mayor's office. So it's, because we continue to come back and have our start line down here, does not mean that conversations have not been had.
So are you guaranteeing me that since our resolution that was passed last year, that you have worked with all of those agencies and seen, it's been a year and 2 months, have there been opportunities that you have investigated?
There have been conversations had, but it is a multi-year process in order to get something like this rerouted and changed.
And I believe we've been asking for multi-years, so, I'm happy that we can mitigate circumstances and we can try and work together, and that's all nice, but share the wealth.
And to be completely frank, moving it from this area to another area it's gonna, we do impact the entire city, and we understand that, but it's not, we would just be moving our problem from here to another area, so it's,
What if it's non-residential?
Gotcha.
Well,
And given
that's
that
a
it's the beginning of the race, I understand that everything else shifts, but to Tammy's point, I think the general frustration from folks who've been on the board a lot longer than me is that clearly this has sort of been a wash, rinse, repeat issue year after year after year with the number. So while we're happy that the mitigation's there, I think a lot of these problems could also be solved if some investment was made in a potential rerouting of the start line, to be honest. So thank you that we appreciate those conversations happened, but we'll make sure to include in our reso that we hope that conversations could move into the next phase. All right, so I know you've been patiently waiting, so go for it, sorry.
Could you make one quick?
Oh, that's right, sorry, Colin, really quick, sorry.
I would love a motion for an amendment to her point, I'm sorry for your name, to have some sort of enforcement mechanism between us and the organization. That's all. I think it's a
I
really
think
good
that's what
idea.
she was gonna bring up, because
Yeah,
that was
no.
supposed to be from last year, and I think you
We've said it.
took your point.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we'll add it into the reso.
Great.
Thanks, Colin.
So,
No, this is just last year's, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I thought
That's
it
okay,
was-
totally
okay,
cool, yeah.
This is,
Okay,
Got it.
you've been
Last
very
year's
patiently
reso.
waiting, so we appreciate that, all yours.
So I am a neighbor who you guys know because
Yep.
you've seen me a zillion times at this.
I thought it was a serious,
Um,
sorry.
I will say number one,
Sorry, Mark.
number one, it was much better last year for me on Duane Street. I should never have been hearing what I heard in previous years, and it was much better. But 10 days out, I had been trying to call you guys to find out what was going on. I got no answers. I emailed the Quality of Life and said the agreement was that there were going to be signs and flyers down as far as where the speakers had been in the past. And at 10 days out, I saw nothing. So then I got an email back saying that they called you and were told that flyers had been distributed. I had done a walk through the area by me, there had been none. There were some on the block on Franklin, right where the speakers were going to be. So those were there, but there was nothing south of that at that time. And the message I got back was that, and I asked for the contact number for the day of, and I didn't get that either. I was told that apartment buildings, they were going to get notifications. I asked in my apartment building whether or not anybody had come in. No, they had not. I've got a series of emails, but 2 days before, I finally started to see a few flyers again, and I was given the phone number. On the day of, I tried calling the phone number. The phone number said that the voicemail had not been set up and nobody was answering it. Now, the whole point that I had made when I put together for that was that it was a number that somebody would answer on the day. No one answered, no voicemail, no way to contact anybody. So to say that things were 100% would not be true. Much better, absolutely much better. Now, I also can't speak for the people who live right there at Franklin, because I did get up and go there, and it was loud. I don't know if anyone, I'm not complaining for them, because it's not it's not for me to complain. My complaint was about my home at 6 in the morning. I appreciate that there were fewer announcements. I appreciate that the music was lower. I still wonder why there is a need for recorded music at all at
Yeah.
that hour of the morning.
Okay.
And so I would ask that, but I would ask for better communication with the community. And a suggestion, an added suggestion might be to put the contact information and the information about it in Tribeca Citizen and Tribeca Tribune, so that neighbors who look at those things can actually get that information. I mean, it's another, other than putting something up on, a telephone pole.
Like they do on a movie
That's
shoot
helpful.
sometimes.
Yeah,
where they
yeah,
have
they'll
like a-
put the sign up.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
hoping
let
if
me-
Mike New York could talk
if I
about
could
the,
ju-
if you could talk about,
so
as you respond, if you could talk about two things for me.
Certainly.
If you could include, sort of what the communication strategy is, how many days up you
Sure.
put up beforehand.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. First of all, Sue is a tough customer, but she's awesome. You don't have a bigger advocate than Sue. But I do want to say two things. One is that I hire a team of outreach coordinators every year, a team of 3, and that team is also supplemented by another full-time person. We covered 4 blocks around the start stage twice, focusing on apartment buildings, focusing on businesses, so that those businesses who want to be open or to take advantage of the fact that we are there can be open and make some sales. So that's the process. Now, we also do it approximately 10 days out for a couple of reasons, and we do it twice for a couple of reasons. Flyers are removed. I've done this other places. The weather happens, there's rain, and so we go back again to re-flyer and also go into those apartment buildings where we take the additional step. Is there a general manager here? We don't just leave it with the doorman, because the doorman might leave it at his desk, or perhaps doesn't take the flyer over to the mailbox area or the general posting area. So we do take that additional step of asking for the general manager if there's a property manager on site. So it was done twice, a team of 4 over a 4-block radius around Franklin and Church. So, and we hire them specifically to do this process every year. Yeah, not every year. For the first time last year. That was the first time that we've done that.
Could you address the contact phone number, Sharon, please?
Yeah.
So the contact phone number is a day of telephone number, and we just don't have that information. However, we have
Sharon, can you
the
back up?
You skipped something.
information.
Hold on, you skipped
Sure,
I just want to make sure I understand. So,
sure.
it's a day of number, but you don't know it until the day of?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No,
That's why I got
because-
confused.
No, that's okay. We know the number approximately 10 days out because they go on the flyers.
Okay.
They have to go, the number has to appear on the flyer
Could you address what she said?
in terms of.
Just for the number not.
Nobody answered
throwing
and there
your
was no voicemail.
Voicemail.
So then what's the use of the number?
Well, you know what, my,
I'll just pipe in.
Sure.
This year,
Thank
it's not
you.
gonna be an issue.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. I mean, that's,
Somebody answers the phone.
but you can
number.
understand that.
Oh yeah, if you call a number, you at least want to dial something.
You just at least want
Yeah.
something.
And-
But that was the whole negotiation.
All right.
I
I
will
mean-
personally test that the phone number works beforehand.
And,
And there'll
and,
be a checklist that my start manager Lacey
And I will-
literally goes through.
and I will tell you that my building is a 52-story building with hundreds of residents. So it's not like, you're gonna drop it off with it's gonna disappear into nowhere land. I asked the resident manager, I asked the general manager, I asked the front desk, I asked the doorman. Nobody was reached out to. So it's not, it's not like it got missed
And
somewhere.
to defend Sharon and the outreach crew, because we had a meeting literally about this and reviewing the flyer for this year last week or 2 weeks ago.
Great.
We're going over all these details, but an issue that we do come into is sometimes building managers don't want to speak to you, don't allow you in, and it isn't like we can actually go in and flyer their doors in apartments, so.
That's
Sharon
true,
and
that's
her-
true.
Absolutely.
Sharon and her team they're gonna hit what they know you can see, which are the street poles in that area.
But I was saying,
but-
we have filming happening in this neighborhood
Yeah.
daily.
Right, right.
And we see, I mean, those things will be up there for days and days and days after.
Yeah.
So it's not like we don't see the signs.
People have more respect
I
for the-
literally walked to the neighborhood. You initially said 5 blocks, then you changed it to 4 blocks around, but I literally walked to the neighborhood looking for the
Even if
flyers.
the community
So-
board had the phone
So,
number.
and to that, can
To
I
be
hear
fair.
a request and recommendation, just, so, I hear you, it's hard to get building managers to focus. If the community board usually sends it out, you should still continue to do that, but if you could send us whatever materials you're sharing out to as far back as possible, we can blitz our contacts to also make sure they're
That's
aware.
great.
And if
I
you can have
sent,
one- I'm
you know,
sorry.
I sent it out to the community board,
Great.
so
So-
the community board does get the flyers.
Great, and we'll make sure to,
Yes.
okay, sorry. And then, just to keep, sorry folks, just keep right there, wrapping up, Andrew, I think you had a question?
So I'm not sure if it's specific to this topic, but very quickly, I would just ask this committee to be particularly sensitive to events that make it difficult to cross West Street by the ball fields.
Mhm.
That's a natural point
Got it.
for a lot of families and children, particularly around these sports. And we've had issues at times during the year with events that make that crossing very
Okay.
problematic.
All right. Fortunately, I think folks are good on this because the start times are staggered. But nonetheless, I hear you loud and clear. Okay. So just to generally wrap this discussion up. Obviously, we'll do a resolution on this. I think just to list up some of the things that we'll definitely include. Obviously, having a representative from Bike New York there at the start line to go through the checklist and making sure it's 6 speakers directly between Franklin and Leonard is helpful. Yeah.
Is anyone else here for this, or is it?
Oh,
just-
I didn't see any other hands raised. Sorry, was there any other hands raised or about this topic? Nope. Okay, thanks for clarifying. Okay, so we'll include that. Obviously, putting out the flyers, I think upwards of 10 days before is what you normally do.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so we'll just make sure we include a note about that you'll send it to the community board beforehand to make sure that we can also assist with your outreach. That Bike New York will check on the performance of the DF number to make sure that the voicemail is set up, and that we appreciate it's part of the checklist.
Wasn't
And-
it gonna be a live person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's supposed to be a live
Yes,
person,
there's
yeah,
supposed
yeah.
to be a live person to
Yeah,
answer,
so it
yes.
seems like it was an anomaly that we're in Sioux Call
Can I
didn't
just-
go and, yeah.
Just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah.
So there'll be no speakers south of Leonard Street on Church?
Correct, right, that is correct. It's supposed to be between Franklin and Leonard, so we'll, in the preamble of the clause, we'll just make a note that, we flagged for Bike New York that it wasn't the case last year, and we would expect them to do that again this year. Anything else that we should also include? Yes, Mark?
Just from the old resolution, if we
Yeah.
cut and paste the last four, therefore be it resolved,
Mhm.
and just simply modify it simply as stated in our 2018 resolution.
Mhm.
And exactly the same language, all you have to do is just eliminate in 2019.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, great.
And then that bullhorn usage will start at 9 a.m.
Okay,
think she
Bullhorn
said that.
at 9 a.m.,
Yeah.
got it.
And then there's probably a few other things you can cut and paste from there, to the times and
Yeah.
streets and stuff like that.
Yep,
So-
yeah, we'll largely be using this as a
Right,
model with
right.
those additions.
Yeah, okay.
Great. Is there anyone else have any, yes, Tammy?
Template.
I know it takes a multi-year process, but I think that we should volunteer to help be a part of that. Even if it's to have a conversation, because we're having a conversation here. What I know from the way events operate in Battery Park City, no matter what conversations we have with the Battery Park City Authority and the event organizers, NYPD does what NYPD needs to do, when they need to do it. So unless we're all at the table together and everybody understands where we're going cross-reference,
Yeah.
it's not as effective. So perhaps, even if the conversations have to do with noise, where, when, it would be helpful.
Did we have new start location in there, request? That they look for a new start location?
Yeah, that's what Tammy
That's
was.
in there?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that's
alright,
what Tammy was
just
talking about, and
wanna-
we'll make sure to
okay,
include
okay.
that.
Well,
And the-
that's not the start where they line up,
yeah.
that's the start where the race begins.
They search
Yeah.
for a new logo.
Yeah, and the other request I guess I'll make is a month or two after the event, after you guys, have a drink, calm down after staging a massive event, that you, or two, I don't blame you, I want 3 after this meeting, but, I'm kidding, not really. If you can come back to the community board, either, we do the transportation meeting or just a meeting with the staff to almost do a postmortem, just to make sure everything went okay, so that, Sue doesn't have to come once a year, and, we can just kind of handle everything right after the event. Okay, great. All that being said, we'll include all the resolution. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, any abstentions, recusals, saying none. Okay, great, that passes. Thank you, Bike New York. Appreciate you coming in.
And don't forget,
Thank you, Sharon.
Would love to partner with.
On the trainings,
transportation
we're going to take you up on that.
On the classes, on the free classes.
I appreciate that, and thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right. All right. So the next item we have on the agenda is make way for Lower Manhattan. I know that there's some folks for the newsstand. My apologies. You'll be up in about 20 minutes or so. So if you could sit tight, we'll get to you. I promise.
Are we talking about this?
What's that? Yeah, at the end.
All right, so I'm trying to find the Battery Park City Authority report, just so you know, so I can compare street closures on that side to the street closures requests you've got here.
Okay, that works.
All right,
So everybody,
that's
so
what I was
they,
Go for it.
trying
they
to
have
find out.
packets that they want to hand out, and it's about,
That's
I
why I
like
got up,
Jeff
and so I
Fogle.
could be prepared. I apologize.
Okay, okay. All right. Do you want to kick off this one? Great. So I'm going to do a quick preface. I think for those who have been involved in the community, we know who these two guys are. But there was a number of news stories over the past couple weeks about the Financial District Neighbors Association with a proposal regarding slow streets within the financial district area. There have been a lot of conversations about this, and of course, just as a community, we always want to encourage all of our neighbors to speak up whenever they have the creative thoughts or ideas. So to that end, we want to invite the Financial District Neighbors Association to come, give a presentation, give an update about what their proposal is, and so we can continue to have an honest and robust conversation about ways to make sure that our streets are easier for pedestrian, bicyclists, and pedestrians alike. All right, so I'll kick it over to the
Thanks,
FDNA
Reggie.
folks.
Hi, everybody. For those I don't know, I'm Patrick Cannell. I'm here today in my capacity as president of the Financial District Neighborhood Association. I'm joined by the more famous Luis Vasquez, who is the purveyor of, he's a board member of the FDNA and the purveyor of the FIDI fan page on Facebook, which is over 4,100 residents and business owners who follow everything that he has, all his updates, everything FIDI. As Reggie mentioned, we're here to present to you on the Make Way for Lower Manhattan report that the FIDI Neighborhood Association released in the last couple of weeks. I want to stress that it's a report. It's not necessarily a plan. It is certainly not any kind of robust plan that would be able to be implemented on its own. It's really a set of ideas and a call for action to do something about the conditions in the financial district. Many of you may remember Make Way for Lower Manhattan as a problem statement that was presented to Community Board 1 and supported by Community Board 1 over the past couple of years by a company called Borough, which is an engineering firm that had grant money from the Kaplan Foundation. That grant money has run out, so they were looking for a volunteer organization to really sort of pick up the mantle and try to champion these ideas. And the FIDI Neighborhood Association was a very willing participant in that. We've been involved over the past couple of years as well, since 2016, and really trying to come up with some ideas to come to some solutions. And the ideas are really to solve once and for all the problems that exist on the streets of FIDI, which is the fastest growing residential neighborhood in all of New York City, some say even the country. And with the colonial era streets of FIDI come a lot of crowding problems. Those crowding problems are really symptoms of poor planning for the residential boom that's happened in FIDI. Some of those problems, as you notice, is poor planning for residential garbage, for storage and pickup. Poor planning for residential parking, where in an area where placard parking overwhelms the streets. Poor planning for residential and commercial deliveries. No doubt all of you see the not even double parked trucks, they just park right up on the sidewalk. And poor planning around scaffolding and how we deal with vendor cards, etc. While Make Way for Lower Manhattan is a call to action for the city to address these issues, it's really not anything new. And I want to give you just a brief timeline, if I may. For at least the past 15 years, the city has been talking about doing something with the crowding problems in the financial district. In 2008, the DOT, following a study that was commissioned by the LMDC and EDC, issued a report called Street Management Framework, the New Downtown for the 21st Century. And that report talked about, as I said, a street management pilot program, and this is to, quote, reduce traffic congestion, manage placard parking, and create complete streets and engage public spaces in Lower Manhattan. That was as of 2008. In 2010, the DOT did another study and updated that street management framework report to say that Viaduct would be a prime place to try a shared streets idea if you wanted to do that in New York City. And then CB1 has long been concerned about these problems. In 2015, CB1 did a pedestrian study where we surveyed folks on the street who were walking about all parts of CB1. And in the financial district, crowded streets and crowded sidewalks were the #1 problem. In June and July of 2015, CB1 passed a resolution in support of the concepts of the original Make Way for Lower Manhattan problem statement. And in 2016, following on that pedestrian study, CB1 and our fellows did a streetscape study where they looked at all the impediments that were on our sidewalks. And the report was a shocking amount, particularly in Viaduct, of just sheer things that exist on the sidewalk that further add to the problem of pedestrians being able to get around. That resulted in a June 2016 resolution of this board, again, supporting the concepts of Make Way for Lower Manhattan, and specifically calling for a pedestrian safety and mobility study in the financial district. In 2017, with the support of every single one of our local elected officials and CB1, Councilmember Chin was able to secure $500,000 in city funding for a DOT study. That money was set aside in the fiscal year 2018 city budget, and it has not been used since. That study hasn't happened, and nothing has happened in the last 2 years. The conditions have only gotten worse. And as Tammy mentioned earlier, the residential population is not subsiding, it's only growing, and the problems are only going to get further worse. In the interest of time, I'll just refer you guys to pages 4 to 10 of this report, which lay out the challenges, including tourism growth, the boom of residential population, particularly in the conversion of old commercial office buildings, and taking away what used to be commercial garbage bays. And you see there's been a lot of investment and a lot of planning west of Broadway, the World Trade Center site, efforts to improve the experience in Battery Park City. But basically, east of Broadway, everything's kind of been forgotten. It's a challenge because of the old colonial street map, as I mentioned. It really makes a difference because sidewalks are narrower in the financial district than anywhere else in the city. So are the streets. So when you compact that many people into that little bit of an area, it really adds to the headaches. And I know you guys have seen these pictures and problems before, and even the Downtown Alliance did their own study specifically on the Stock Exchange District, and they came and presented to CB1 with their ideas on that. What we're proposing in this Make Way for Lower Manhattan report is building on those ideas, and particularly their ideas with regard to New Street and Exchange Place are very similar to some of the things that we're throwing out there as ideas. So you see some of the problems that currently exist, the garbage piles, security obstructions, it's difficult to navigate around. Deliveries and placard parking are a real problem. The placard parking doesn't need to be there. The deliveries need to be there, but they're not being prioritized. And because they're not being prioritized, they're helping to clog up the streets. And you see a lot of pedestrian congestion with construction and scaffolding. That's a way bigger problem, as we know, to solve. So this plan really, it doesn't solve for that. It just can't. That's a way bigger problem. So here's the opportunity as we see it. You all have a copy of the report, and I would encourage you to look around pages 30 to 31, which really are...
There's extra ones over there.
One of the biggest ideas that we're proposing is a slow street zone, as you heard. I want to be clear, this is not a plan to pedestrianize the financial district. This is not a plan to make it car-free or to restrict cars even. In fact, this plan would have nothing to do with the volume of traffic that exists in the financial district. This is all about taking that amount of real estate that's between the building envelopes, prioritizing it, and rationalizing it for people that are trying to get around the financial district, particularly the residents. Even though in the financial district fewer than 14% of FIDI residents own cars, that makes it one of the 5 lowest car ownership neighborhoods in the city, compared to Battery Park City, which is at 28%, and Tribeca, which is at 35%, which actually among 2 among the 5 highest in the city. So even within Community Board 1, you have this real juxtaposition. But even with that low incidence of car ownership, cars are important, deliveries are important, taxis are important to the residents of the financial district, and you can't take those things away. So I want to be clear that that's not what this plan is. But because of the current conditions, pedestrians are walking in the streets anyway. We have to recognize that fact and deal with it. And so we need to solve for the safety issues. So slow streets are different. Many of you may remember the shared streets pilot that took place one morning, very hot morning, several summers ago. I thought it went well. It kind of got a mixed review, quite frankly. And shared streets was difficult. Police didn't even know how to help drivers figure out what was going on. Slow streets are a lot different than that. So in a slow streets model, you might have, in one example, a curbless street. So you have building to building, you have no curbs, but you do have a dedicated lane of travel that is marked differently and could be even set off by smaller bollards, which we saw in the Alliance Stock Exchange study, that widen the sidewalk real estate that's available for pedestrians. Now, a slow street zone, as I said, would widen the sidewalk and pedestrian space. It would shrink travel lanes, and here's a rendering of what one might look like. This is along Nassau Street as you approach Beekman. Right here is the Beekman Hotel. Just an idea or a rendering, right? You see how there's a difference in the pavement here that marks the lane of travel. We've seen some ideas and designs that have small bollards here so that you do keep the traffic and the pedestrians separated. So you shrink the travel lane to absolutely what's necessary, and you install calming gateways at the entrances to the area. Cars would theoretically travel under our idea at a maximum of 10 miles per hour, but that's more than the actual rate of speed anyway, which is now in the Central Business District only 5 to 7 miles an hour. And it would reassign large blocks of parking, but it would not remove all parking. Largely, the parking situation in FIDI is placard parking, both legal and illegal. We're talking about the government fleet vehicles for the municipal agencies that are downtown, as well as the personal vehicles of many of the employees who go to those agencies. They have parking spaces in garages. They have other spots nearby where they can park legally that's off the street. And that real estate is incredibly valuable for getting things like garbage, for example, off the sidewalk and returning that real estate to the pedestrians. One possible idea that I just want to note that we've heard as a response to this idea and this plan is when you do have parking that's available, to make sure that it's given for residential uses, that you consider the idea of residential parking passes. I think that's an amazing idea that could work and really, and Mitch, I heard your idea too earlier about metered parking. That might be another way that you achieve that. So again, it's about prioritizing it back to the residents.
Only if you could, and I'm with you on everything, but only if you could, the placard parking, like basically no matter what we say.
Let's let him finish.
Okay, fine.
Sorry. Appreciate
So
you guys saying that.
in place of many of those placard parking spots right now, what we would envision you'd have are dedicated bays for deliveries, for commercial and residential deliveries, so that we don't have the UPS trucks and the FedEx trucks double parking up on the sidewalk, so that the Fresh Direct trucks can get in there and deliver, so that the local restaurant can get their food deliveries every single day, so that all that stuff is able to happen. And it would also facilitate, in some spots, like in Battery Park City, you have multiple buildings that share compacting and garbage collection stations. They would have to look a lot nicer, obviously, to make this attractive, but they'd be places where DSNY could get in very easily and get the job done. Because the biggest quality of life problem that was noted in the prior CD1 studies with regard to the sidewalks in Fidei are the trash heaps.
I'm trying to understand the streets, I can't see.
So this would specifically help with the trash collection problem by giving DSNY more access to move about the travel lanes when deliveries and car traffic would be at its lowest. And we'd also call for rule changes as to when residential garbage could be put out and how long it could stay out on the curbs. Going forward, there are changes that could be made in the zoning to help with residential conversions and new builds that would require space to be kept back or even incentivize developers to keep back space that would hold that garbage. But you're not going to be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube with regard to all the development that's already happened. So our ideas hopefully would achieve ways of getting that stuff off the sidewalk. We'd also propose an interagency task force to coordinate with other city agencies, DSNY, DOB, NYPD, FDNY, to ensure that delivery of city services are given a priority and to make sure that the plan works for the entirety of those agencies as well. Our report also includes some other big ideas that we were thinking about, such as, this is right outside this building. We can envision a large pedestrian oasis here that really caps the northern end of Fidei and helps relieve some of the congestion on the Brooklyn Bridge. This is, by the way, this is just a big idea, but it would turn, as it currently does, you would have the FDR traffic would turn itself back up this way, and in any real plan, you'd have to be able to solve for problems like getting the local travel onto the right streets, because the last thing we want to do is to clog up Water Street or create unintended consequences on any of the other streets. So some of these big ideas, as I said, are grand public spaces. Here's another idea around Bowling Green, where you could close off this street and make this a grand area for tourists to gather and residents to enjoy. And it's a really great gateway to the Battery. We know that though Fearless Girl is gone right now, with the bull here, this is a really dangerous situation. And I know that the...
What street you're saying you want to close? I thought you said you didn't want to close any streets in your presentation.
Well, this would basically pedestrianize one block of...
but that's contradicting your opening statement.
No. That's 4 blocks.
No.
Down to the Battery.
So wait, guys, folks, I'm sorry to interrupt. So
just to be clear,
just
to be clear, it's a bigger idea, right? And when I say not to pedestrianize, it's not to pedestrianize the entirety of the financial district, particularly the area where residents live.
Patrick, just going to ask you a couple more minutes.
Yeah. I'm actually close to them. So as I said, it's a bold idea, a bold plan with some big ideas. Some of it will work, some of it possibly won't, to Mark's point. But we won't know unless we ask the city to try something. So what we are asking is that the DOT consider taking the $500,000 that's already allocated in the city budget for a study they're not going to apparently do, and use it to implement some of these ideas, and obviously visit them with the community board when they have actual plans in place, but to pilot for 6 months some of these ideas and see if it really gives us any relief in the financial district. And so we're here to present that, but also to see if it's something that CD1 would theoretically support. If you can't, I understand not everything is going to be met with approval, but at the very least supporting the notion of doing something and a call to action to give residents in the financial district some relief. It's time already.
Anything else to add? No? Okay, let me start off. So this is something that I have a feeling that we could have 45 minutes worth of questions, but we're going to do our best to condense it as much as possible. So I'm actually not going to ask anything because I know you guys are. Devin, do you have anything?
Right. I just want to say that there are a lot of schools in the financial district. So how will that factor in? Because there will be like a lot of school children that will be leaving, and maybe possibly just clustering on these big streets.
So I wouldn't see any impact in what there already is right now. I mean, you have school buses. The biggest pain points are around Millennium High School and around, particularly the Pine Street area, you get a lot of schools. The Spruce Street area is a little north of what we're proposing to be with in the district. It might be right at the top edge, but many of the students there walk to school anyway, and Peck Slip School isn't touched by this. But yeah, it would absolutely have to be part of consideration. Again, this is a set of ideas and a call to action. The specifics of how the rules would work and what plans would be really the DOT's purview for them to come back to city.
Great, all right, so committee members and the public, so we'll do Tammy, Colin, Mark, Mitch.
Hey,
Hi, Tim.
so I wondered why some of the things that are in here seem to be doable immediately, like your garbage notes. Why can't what is the issue with talking to the Department of Sanitation and working on street zone time rules that aren't impacting streetscape other than getting the garbage picked up on off hours?
We've been asked, sorry.
So, I mean, that's one line that certainly could be something that's considered as a trial for 6 months to a year, so we can really see if that alone makes a major impact, right?
If DSNY were willing to actually do that, a lot of this problem would have been solved already. We've been asking for that for the better part of 2.5 years now. And the response from the Department of Sanitation is that you can't create a special set of rules without a special district in one area, or else every other neighborhood's going to want it. So they're unwilling to budge on the 4 p.m. rules right now.
Don't we have already specific zones, like when it comes to like the historic district and things like that?
We do, but it's not enough.
But can't we at least try and have a conversation with them that we have historic zones set up? So we start with in the historic zone. If they're saying you don't have zones set up, guess what? We do. And according to city planning, there are several zones.
So the response from DSNY on that specifically has been you would need to have a special transportation zone or some kind of managed street framework. I think that's a bigger idea than what we're going for here necessarily, a managed street framework. I think it's a fantastic idea personally, but sanitation is unwilling to make that big a change in the financial district without something more and without DOT. That's what we've been told. So we've asked, and
that would be one thing that I would, wholeheartedly say if we started with that alone from your idea, I could see that being something that would be easily supportive because it doesn't, there's an impact obviously in the residential community because of the noise at overnight hours, but it does make the quality of daytime life significantly better, and whether or not they're scheduled or whatever. But I take issue with the PBA. There's no way that you're going to get the placards in. Through research that Reggie has been gracious enough to work with me on, trying to deal with stuff for the Battery Park City Committee, we now know that placard parking is a guaranteed right to members of the police force that the city did in the contract, in a union contract. So you will not be able to solve, none of us around this table can solve the placard parking issue. It is far bigger than anything that we can do. And they're guaranteed, I don't remember the exact wording so I don't want to be quoted, but they have a guaranteed right to parking that they don't have to pay for, that the city has to provide. So you're not getting them into these lovely garages. If we could, we wouldn't have the problems that we have in Battery Park City.
So the placard parking in VIDA is not just police. It is overwhelmingly other city agencies.
It's not only police for us either.
And I think that it certainly doesn't hurt to ask or to demand it. I think if there's ever been a climate and a time in New York City when the abuse of placards and the residents being fed up with it has come to a boil, I think we're at that time.
Yeah.
My sense is there may be even political winds over the next 2 years that support changes into that. It is particularly
They just
acute.
also instituted, didn't they just approve something where all placards are going to have to be embedded into the windshields of the...
But it doesn't make it, that
well,
doesn't...
that should make some difference,
Not
for
if,
sure.
not if the traffic agent refuses to give them a ticket, which they've told me
They
personally.
have what they call self-enforcement zones for all city vehicles and placards. So, I mean, we're trying to, I'm happy if we can put our heads together with Reggie and find a solution that could fit all of our needs for that alone, that would be the most amazing boon for Lower Manhattan. But I don't see that changing. In fact, I see it getting worse when when and if the detention center gets built, which will then push further into FIDI.
Right.
So I have a lot of concerns with where we're going on this. I see some things that, gosh almighty, if we could advocate DOT to get their butts moving with DSNY to solve that issue, that actually cascades to congestion and street traffic and garbage. I mean, as something that, if you tackled that one,
That would be the biggest one.
yeah.
All right, next, I think Colin was up.
Yeah, sorry, is this a resolution here? Are we actually doing a resolution on this tonight?
My recommendation is gonna be no.
Okay.
But just for a lot of reasons, I'll get to the end, but go for it, Colin.
Yeah, then I'm less panicked, but there's a lot of great work, and I support a lot of it. It makes a lot of sense. My only quick point, since we're not doing a resolution, is some of these traffic points, pressure points, scare the crap out of me, especially Center Street going to Brooklyn Bridge, which I travel fairly often.
And especially after the NYPD just talked about adding bike lanes.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, also just kind of a quick point, Trafalgar Square is actually in a restricted area, so you can't actually drive down there unless you're a delivery truck or you live there. So if you want to do that, let's do that. But outside of that, that's my only point. Is I drive this area a lot. I live at 8th Spruce Street, and the slightest disruption to traffic around there causes reverberating effects all throughout the neighborhood. So I'd want to have a real deep dive on what those effects would be.
Mitch?
Well, I think, was Mark next?
Oh, sorry. Go for it, Mark.
There's a few things. I saw the news report with Catholic Reviews on it. That's what prompted me to email Anthony. Because in the news report, you talk about the garbage and the scaffolds and all that stuff, which you talked about. But in the news report, it said that the neighborhood association was requesting DOT to implement something this month.
Right.
What are you requesting specifically that DOT implement?
Well, what we've asked DOT to do, and I think you know as well as I do, unless you put a date on something or ask them to get moving, nothing's ever going to happen, is to start take the $500,000 that was previously allocated and start a pilot study. We picked a symbolic date of April 22nd, actually, which is Earth Day. Knowing full well that they would never do anything, they couldn't even physically achieve anything in that amount of time. But they would obviously have to come up with any kind of plans and come back to the community board and get input from them.
So the sequence of events is they'll take the 500,000, do the study.
No, they would. Well,
give me the
sequence.
sequence.
I think the time for the study is probably I mean, they could still do it, but I think they've waited for 2 years. It's enough of that. So the sequence of events, as I would see it, is if they're able to move out that money that's already been allocated, come up with a specific plan and set of pilot interventions that they could do over a 6-month period and see how those go. They would come back to the community board, well, next month, but we know they're not going to, but as soon as possible this year to try to get input on specifically down in the weeds on each of those interventions, and then.
So the pilot would not be implemented until the community board reviewed it.
Yeah, God, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, I just want to be clear on that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
But-
it didn't sound like that. And
There are many pilots that you have in here. I mean, you're billing it as a slow street district, but you also have a sanitation proposal that's in here. And
So-
a street closure
Right. This is
proposal
what
in
I
here.
wanted to talk about. Yeah. So in your initial presentation, you said no street closing, no pedestrian only streets, no streets that would restrict cars. Then you talked about streets that were being closed. This is what I think we may have to do, sort of maybe a resolution, saying two things, that that any implementation, before any implementations, that DOT present to us, and that we would need to review any proposed street closures, and what Colin said about that any type of those street closures have a trickle effect on the neighborhood. So something that's not taking a position, but states some kind of sort of facts, and maybe be 3 or 4 whereases.
Before we go to bench, so my recommendation is, first we have to talk to DOT. We should bring DOT in to give a response, but also Deb and I were talking about bringing a DOT just to talk about, for example, where the heck is the study money going right now? Because if it's sitting, that's a larger
So that could be a whereas too.
And so my recommendation is that we have more questions and answers to quite a lot of this, which is my recommendation would be at the full board to give a report on on this, sort of the highlights of what the Financial District Neighbors Association is thinking about, what their ideas are, what they're proposing, but that we shouldn't do a resolution until we actually take into account what DOT has, what their plans are.
Just so-
Because otherwise it's a proposal on what, a neighborhood proposal without having any real information from the agencies about what their
I mean,
plans
the neighborhood association has a lot of sway and prominent people on it, so I'm a little nervous about
was a compliment to you
things
guys.
Yeah.
might be implemented if we're not on record of saying something.
There is, I guarantee, I could bet my life on it,
Is
DOT, with all due respect to you all as good advocates, DOT is not suddenly gonna do a pilot tomorrow based on a neighborhood report that came out.
No,
next
but-
I will say,
but-
I don't think
so
I'm
I would
revealing
like-
anything out of
Yeah,
school.
let Tammy.
Well, I hear what Mark's saying, because Councilmember Chin has come out saying something.
Yeah.
Yulene has come out.
Yeah.
So there is concern, and rightful so, that it could be construed as a
Yeah.
slow street drive around.
Yeah, my recommendation would be for next month, when we bring Ed into the next month's meeting, to give an update, both, on where the heck the study money is going, but also a response to this, that we actually craft something that's much more holistic and much more detailed, because
So
right
do-
now, I personally, as chair, and I don't know.
So we'll do a resolution next month.
Ideally, once
okay.
DOT comes and we get more information, that would be
So-
my
so
recommendation,
next
but
month, all right.
we're a committee, and I'm not a dictator, so.
Yeah, I was thinking that just that milk, that my proposal was that milk talk resolution, what I
Mitch,
mentioned.
Go for it.
Okay, so who else agrees with that? We'll see.
And Mark, I would just say too, we would never propose that anything actually be implemented without more community input. The more, the better. These are just our ideas for now, and more ideas that come from around the table, the better. And I don't think I'm speaking out of school by saying that in conversations we've had with the DOT, they would never do anything unless the community board.
And I think you heard the concern about closing streets to vehicular traffic. You heard, everyone dander went up, so.
Mitch,
Rethink
Also,
that.
just one more thing,
Yeah,
these problems have been around for years, and we need to actually do something. And that's what we're here, we're bringing ideas up, to have some pilots, something has to be done, and not just say no to everything, and something just has to be done.
Well, you're packaging everything, a lot of different
Yeah,
ideas
yeah,
into one
absolutely.
piece. Like it's
Absolutely.
like when I saw that the Center Street closure, which I think it is a closure, it freaks me out.
Yeah,
It
it's
would cause huge problems on Broadway.
It's bad, it's bad.
It's a lot to unpack.
If we can segment these
Yeah,
things,
so all in
I
all,
think
it's just a lot to unpackage. Mitch, you've been waiting, and then,
Some are
sorry,
good, some are
folks.
not.
Sorry, guys, gotta bring some, folks.
I interrupt other
Just-
people, I don't mind you
No,
interrupting.
all right, Mitch, go for it.
Tammy took care of my point about the placard parking.
Excellent.
And no matter how, I'm with you on that, but unless you take care of that, which is not gonna happen in the near future, then a lot of this other stuff. I would recommend, before I make a few points, there's some things in here that are really good, and there's a lot of things that I think are either not good or not practical. Instead of voting one thing, like sometimes when politicians put different things in, they wanna slip their own bill in, but you can't vote for that even though you like the other thing, I would break some of this stuff up, one thing.
Yeah,
I agree.
Two things, okay, so we have the
it's a really
placard.
good recommendation.
Let's go
I'm
after.
I'm
Yes and no.
fortunate to, I've, been to all these places that you have examples. I mean, this picture of Copenhagen, I've seen it's beautiful, but it's not a fair representation of what we have here.
Yeah, it's sprawled, because this is,
But the one thing that, if
Sorry,
you could
sorry.
turn to, Reggie, if you guys go to page 28, and like, one of the few things that Sharon Pope said that I couldn't agree with more was that, the way they do things in places like Japan, where I'm sorry, they're superior to us as far as the way they treat each other respectfully.
that's the
Look at
difference.
the last part, the shared space, where they have no traffic lights, no traffic signals, no crosswalks, a pedestrian or cyclist may be anywhere on the street at any time, and there are no the thing is, it works in that culture.
Yeah.
I'm envious of that, I've experienced it, it's great. But to even put this in here, there would be chaos. And so, to have that, I mean, if you want to just ban cars, I'm not for that, but but you can't, and I don't have a car. But the thing is,
Just Jersey and Connecticut.
yeah, that last paragraph, Patrick, and your heart's in the right place, but that's not realistic at all here. So why would you, if you want certain things to go through, why would you even suggest having an area where cars, pedestrians, and bicycles could go with zero traffic lights, zero traffic signs, zero, anything?
only the fittest
I
survive.
don't think that's a
Propose
real
that.
suggestion, I think it's more of an example, but I think your point about being culturally different is well taken. You can't, you have to have signals of the rules of the road, that's why the first shared
But
streets.
when somebody else sees that doesn't have the chance to maybe know
Fair
you
point.
will see that, that could turn them off.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that, I think that's something that would be.
Good to know.
Okay, cool. Yes, you do.
Yeah, so, I have a couple points, but on that point specifically, I just got back in from Seattle, and, in some of the bigger tourist squares, they have that, where it's completely flat street, and as a local New Yorker, my friend had to pull me out of the street, because I was still going based on what the street tells me.
Right.
The street language says, this is an open courtyard, this is for pedestrians only, but then she had to stop me, and she said, see this little darker brick red line? This means the sidewalk is. That shit doesn't work with New Yorkers. So, we would definitely need bollards, and especially with the schools. School kids don't pay attention to what's going on around them, and if we don't have bollards that are definitely putting it down that this is the sidewalk, we're gonna have children in the streets. And then we have drivers who are liable for hitting those children, and that just becomes a whole cluster of an issue. And then when we go to the Brooklyn Bridge situation with Center Street, have you ever driven through the Lincoln Tunnel coming from the Jersey side?
Yes.
It's like, what, 3 or 4 lanes, and then it branches out into 8, and then it goes back into 2 again? Are you still stuck in traffic after it branches back out again? Yes.
Right.
It's not gonna really get rid of the, backup that we have over there, and also the Brooklyn Bridge gets really bad on weekends already, and getting rid of an exit for drivers is gonna cause a problem, and we're going to get more noise in the residential, which is right on the right side of that image.
Yeah, and again, this is just a conceptual idea, but
but that's
you
definitely a
could,
concern.
by no means would we propose anything that would, I mean, it would just be antithetical to what we're
Then
trying to
Patrick, why
accomplish.
is it in
more
there, Patrick?
traffic.
I'm just curious, why is it, thank you for saying that, but then if it's not something that you want to propose, why is it in
No,
there?
no, no, it's not something that, what we would not want to propose is to flood the streets with all the traffic that comes back in here. You can, DOT can figure out ways that would, you know, exits that can maybe come out onto here or something like that. I'm sure you could figure that out
Your
where it
proposal
doesn't
here
have
said
kind of-
that only coming north or south off the FDR. Could you imagine if you took 2 of the exits away from coming out of the Holland Tunnel? I mean, it would be even more crazy the way it is. Most traffic, I don't know if you know the right word, the abatements, like for coming off like large expressways, they'll increase different exits around the country, like to make it less, you know.
They added an exit 10 years ago.
So that would be another thing that, okay.
All right, so just a reminder, everybody, so I think what everyone understands is we're not going to be doing a resolution, so if we can ask questions about this, we'll have a much larger conversation about this with DOT next month, but Paul, I know you've been waiting, sorry, I missed you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Alice, my bad.
A lot of good work.
Yeah.
And you should be congratulated.
Here comes
for
the
all
bus.
study and
I want to downshift and go after sanitation.
I'm mainly here on the item that's on the board right now,
Okay.
Brooklyn Bridge. Because certainly the way it's been described in the study that I read calls for the closure of the entrances and exits to the Brooklyn Bridge that feed off the bridge in that area.
Chambers.
And Chambers,
By
Park
Center
Row,
Center Street.
Center Street, all those access roads would be closed. And therefore, and the study says this, the traffic should instead use either the FDR Drive or presumably Pearl Street, which is the only other entrance to the Brooklyn Bridge and exit to the Brooklyn Bridge.
Right.
Now, obviously, it's all well and good, and you should be focusing on trying to create open spaces and trying to relieve congestion, but by doing something like this, which would clearly make the situation totally unbearable in those areas, should be a non-starter, and I would just really strongly urge you to just eliminate this aspect of your proposal, period. I could just tell you, everyone who I've mentioned it to, and not too many people know of your proposal yet, but the ones who have heard about this, and I know some of them are here tonight for that reason, they just are astounded that this is even being considered. So I really think you would probably do everyone a public service by just eliminating that, so we don't have to keep coming back to debate and discuss this, because it just seems like it's a non-starter to, you know, I know you're saying maybe the DOT could come up with other places to put the traffic, but basically it's all going to be onto the east side in those areas where a lot of us live, and we don't want any more traffic. If you've ever traveled on Pearl Street in the morning or afternoon, it's already completely backed up.
Right.
And it makes zero sense to do something like this. So with all due respect, I think that would be something that you should consider, and the community board should certainly consider going on record.
And also Howard Hughes said that they're using Pearl Street as a loading zone. So Pearl.
So we're gonna have Alice, and then yes, you next. Oh, Joanne. Okay, so Alice first.
You know, I'm very pleased to see a plan, you know, and good for you for getting that started. That's always something that's useful. We've seen plans, though, as you're pointing out, for almost 20 years, and most recently in the last 5 years. I think it's critical going forward to do a few things. One is to make it very, very clear how this plan specifically dovetails with the work of the Downtown Alliance and their stock exchange plan, and any other plan that was being worked on in the last few years specific to this area. It seems like the board has agreed that it's only the financial district. I always have trouble with plans, particularly transportation plans, that don't look at a bigger picture, but we sort of have cut off the plan here, and we're just looking at this. And I would argue this is a plan, it's more than a report, or at least that's what we're looking at. So that would be one thing. Two, has there been any consideration of an RFP of, like, besides just having the same designers always engaged in this process, the same firm that did the first set of plans and now we're dealing with them again, was there any idea of maybe putting out the idea of many groups to compete for this plan, or was this just a relationship you had and it was, let's go with it?
I would say it's a relationship. I don't think, our group is an all-volunteer grassroots organization. We're not equipped to set up and do RFPs and
So
handle money.
who paid for this plan?
The Kaplan Foundation
No, but
provided Borough Apple with the funding. This is the last of their funding, and then we wordsmithed on our own, our board, and they were kind enough to help fund printing a few of these booklets and finishing those renderings. We don't have that kind of money.
So this is Kaplan Fund, the end of it, to do another...
It's that, and it's I presume some pro bono work on the part of the folks who were working on it.
I see, okay. So anyway, I just think it would also be really helpful going forward before the community. First of all, I'm glad to have the community engaged. I think it's unfortunate we're engaging always a little late in the game, but it seems like maybe not so late. I also was slightly surprised to see that on March 8th you all had asked for $500,000 from the Department of Transportation to do a pilot program.
No, the money was already allocated 2 years ago.
But for this specific plan.
Yeah.
Slow streets, when none of us had seen the plan, and that was a little surprising, so I'm delighted to know we are taking a step back, and I think that Reggie's suggestion to do so is a good one, because I think the community in general should have time to review this rather incredibly impactful idea, which a lot of people are pointing out the pros and cons. It sounds like more cons, but you know, to compare this to Amsterdam is a little bit utopian. You know, Amsterdam is a city of under 1 million people. You know, I'm not sure where that all comes in. So I think it would be helpful that the designers who were working on this plan, as they go forward, come and speak to the community about what it is that they're proposing, and then also having the Department of Transportation there to respond on a more technical level. I think we really have to understand what the plan is, and before you can ask and I think it should go to the pilot program. It's a great idea. Let's see what happens when you close this space off and make that bigger and the street does whatever. But we've got to have a very secure plan that's understood as to what it is you're piloting. In other words, you say this is based on a report. You've got to have a plan to get a pilot program, don't you?
We're not urban planners, we're not street planners. That's something that I would envision that the DOT would come back with. That's something that they would need to do. I have no expertise in being able to do that. We've relied on the good help of the folks who've gotten the initiative and the problem statement this far, and then we help to put report
So
together.
what's the best use of the $500,000?
The best use of the $500,000 is
From
for
where you're
DOT to come up with that plan that you're speaking
Okay, that's
about.
what so not the pilot program of.
Well, they'd have to use some of it to implement it.
Right, but some aspect of this would be just to really investigate the actual planning of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I would,
that's
yeah,
very
and just to be
helpful
clear,
as
so,
clarity.
and for those, who
Thank
don't
you.
know, DOT spending $500,000 is probably a drop in the bucket for what it really takes to do a real comprehensive study, forget about implementation. So, sorry guys, so we have a lot of, so I know Joanne had her hand up, and then Betty, and then over this side. Sorry, go for it, Joanne.
My name is Joanne Gorman, and I live in South Street Seaport area. And I have little problem, no problem at all with most of what the report does below Fulton Street, the small triangle of irregular street grid that you outlined there. The area is not really a chosen path for any traffic through if they're aware of what's going on in the city. People are not going to travel through that area. The street's blind and go in every direction. So any of the changes suggested, such as the 5-mile speed limit, which you had mentioned is already probably there, would have little impact on any of the surrounding area. So I would go for that. I have a real concern, as Paul mentioned, when the report's vision goes up above Fulton Street, along Park Road through the Civic Center, up through Chambers Street, and then suggests closing off 2 of the ramps of the Brooklyn Bridge. I think it does injustice to your lower section to merge those 2 together. I think you should split them apart, and someday maybe Brooklyn Bridge would be addressed, but it certainly opens up through the whole surrounding area, massive congestion, traffic issues. There's a hospital there that has to be gotten to. It's a bus terminus for buses going up and downtown. So what do? Move that out of the area? So there's a lot of issues with that section. Separate it, and I think you could probably implement your slow zone in the little grid area that you're talking about, south. And it's funny because you mentioned the 2016 shared streets of the Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
They specifically avoided the Park Row area and went from there below. I mean, obviously they're transportation people, they know they couldn't possibly close off the Brooklyn Bridge and not have chaos and people screaming at them. One final note regarding terms. There are a lot of street words that get passed around. Among them, shared streets, slow zones. Scattered throughout your FIDI report are words slow street, slow zone, slow street district. Yet it certainly looks like the intent is really beyond slow streets. If you look at your page with your diagram, with one of your illustrations, I'll tell you in a second. Page 31 that shows Nassau Beekman after, and there are cars and pedestrians mingled. That's a shared street. That's not a slow street. That expands beyond what would be slow. So you have a mix here that's very confusing. So I think we have to be very clear about our definitions of what these are, because certainly shared streets where people and cars are intermingling, there are liability issues that would have to be addressed. If there's an accident, who's responsible? Is the city responsible? Are the local areas responsible? So there are getting those terms clear and making sure all references are to what people understand of those words is important. That's all
Great. Okay. So, since I think we're approaching now 40 to 45 minutes on this one item, we're going to take 2 or 3 more comments. So I know Betty had her hand up, and then this gentleman had his hand up. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you at the end. Sorry. Thank you. Great. Betty?
I applaud you very much for your vision, and I do think you should listen to some of the things, if that makes it more palatable to move along to your real vision, which I think is wonderful, and I hope it gets there. But what I wanted to bring up is a new thing, and that is, I don't know if you realized that New York City was sued by United Spinal, as well as the disabled people of New York, complaining about CB 1, 2, and 3 in New York City. But they're going to have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on accessibility in New York City. That just passed about a week ago. So in fact, DOT has been working on this the last 2 years behind closed doors, hammering out this agreement. The judge is going to finalize the end of this summer. So the details of how they're going to implement it isn't known. Probably a very good time, one, to go to DOT and try to dovetail some of what you want to do in the financial district, because I know they're struggling with how to make those sidewalks accessible to meet this law, and they have a judge breathing down their neck now to get it done. Also, the Center for Independence of Disabled New Yorkers, which is located in CB3, is the other suing party. And they have a big interest in this area and making it more accessible to people using wheelchairs and others. Another very good ally that I don't know if you've considered talking to some of these groups, but they have a lot of leverage right now with DOT in the city of New York. And so I brought an article you can look at to see, get information about who the judges are exactly who are sitting on these and some of the dates they have to make due on moving forward on this agreement.
Interesting, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great, this gentleman.
Paul Kiefer, I'm the president of Southbridge Towers. I won't take up a lot of time because I just want to endorse what Joanne and Paul were saying. I mean, it's a big concern to close an exit of the Brooklyn Bridge. The other thing that I was thinking of is, and it wasn't mentioned, New York is very high security against terrorism. And, you know, we had the drive, you know, the truck driver that came down on the west side and killed bicyclists. You know, unless there are bollards or something to protect the pedestrians and stores, I think that has to be built into the plan. I think the plan is very interesting, except for some of the street closures. But I think you have to take a little bit more security, you know, just in New Yorkers' minds, especially in our area.
Yeah, so, like, looking at this rendering, for example, I hear what you're saying, and bollards is probably the answer to achieving that security issue.
Right.
But there are other notions within the plan. It doesn't come out and say it, perhaps we should a little bit more, but security is a big part and parcel of this concern. It amazes me how many big, giant, nondescript trucks are sitting up parked on sidewalks at any given moment. With a measure like this for Slow Streets District, you would have some sense, or at least the NYPD would have some sense of who's coming in and who's going.
Thank you.
Can we go to the last comment? Yes.
Yeah, so I won't take up a lot of time either. I'm gonna endorse a lot of what my fellow Southbridge Towers people have said. But not just for this, but for any other plan, just to keep in mind how sensitive Pearl Street is. Howard Hughes Corp. isn't up and running yet on Pier 17, so that is going to be more trucks coming down there. It is the M15, which I take and it slows to a crawl. I have a car and sometimes I come out of my garage, it can take me 15 minutes just to get from 299 Pearl to the bridge. We have the Blue School, we have the children's school, the daycare, as well as Peck Slip. And there's actually an area under the bridge that you take your life in your hands when you're going to Chinatown. And we need a light there, we need something there. There's never a clear time when you can cross, because you think you can cross and they're turning left, you think you can cross and they're turning right. I mean, it's really kind of, you all know what I'm talking, it's crazy. You just,
Frankfurt Street Triangle?
is that,
It's,
yes,
Frankfurt,
Frankfurt Street, yeah,
yeah,
like if you wanna cross, you can get run over.
Yeah.
And obviously, anything that causes any standstill will obviously create more fumes and pollution and whatnot. The street gets shut down for protests, for leukemia, for this. So that street's super sensitive, and even the trucks are spilling over now from Fulton Street because they can't park on Fulton. So now they're all idling there. But there were some really good things in there. And when you talk about things like garbage, if we can get garbage off the street, if we can get scaffolding off, if we can get rid of some of the Priuses that are taking up, the parking spots.
Otherwise known as William Street?
Yeah,
Right.
and if we can also have
City cars.
any areas where people can pull in to load and unload, I mean, all of those things are great.
Awesome. Okay, sorry, so we're now gonna be approaching an hour. If you both can keep it to under 60 seconds per comment, and then we'll close out.
30
That work?
seconds after him.
No, all right, go for it.
One thing I didn't notice in your plan, you want more cars off the streets, why don't you talk about incentivizing maybe parking lots or building garages into new construction? And I also just want to echo, the Seaport District, we're dealing with Howard Hughes, we're dealing with the concept of them creating a traffic nightmare on Pearl Street for their abatement of 250 water. This is just, we'll add on more of the same if there is congestion, or if there is only one entrance or exit on Pearl Street, it will just create more congestion and it won't fix anything.
Patrick, I just wanted to say that
this, from my point of view, is a study in overdevelopment, and the fact is, communities build themselves, and people decide to move into this. They can come down here on the subway and look around, oh damn, who could live here? But they manage, and not only do they come here, but they pay astronomical fees to live here. It's really amazing. But everything that I see is actually building toward, we're building more and more and more buildings. We're adding a style of delivery so that everything, my shoes is one delivery, my coat's one delivery. We have a style of garbage producing that's never been in all of human history matched. And so everything is kind of on this extreme extrapolation up to the sky. And then if we add another half a mile on the lower Manhattan and build into that, Jesus, where are we going to, how are we even going to supply blood to that every day? And so we have to have water in that, electricity, power, places to, ways to move around goods and sell things. I just think the whole problem's over the top.
Next steps. All right, so just to move forward in terms of sort of next steps, so first off, I want to thank you both for coming and dispelling a lot of the information. I think everyone was going off of articles, so it's always good to have you in person. In terms of next steps.
Reggie, can I ask him the short question? And this is almost like a yes or no.
Can I wait? Can you ask after?
Yeah.
So thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Mitch. In terms of next steps, well, Ed Pinkar and DET come next month. We're obviously want to talk about their thoughts regarding this, regarding the study money, etc. So we'll.
You and DSNY to come at the same time. Maybe we can get a cross conversation.
I'll ask Greg Anderson to maybe come. But I hear you. This is a lot to distill within one meeting. So as was mentioned before, there are a lot of different pieces on this. So.
What are you asking the Department of Transportation to do?
So money was there was $500,000 was allocated for study, if you will, south of
So what
Fulton.
do they study? What will they?
So I think it's to give an update first foremost about what the heck they're using the money for. Because it's supposed to be used for a study.
Based on all these reports that have been done over the last few years.
It was supposed to be a pedestrian study of Lower Manhattan. That's but yeah, so a mobility study.
The East Mission somehow, all the things that you've outlined as your mission in the report, levels that to take,
Sorry, folks. Sorry. Hey, I'm sorry. Really sorry, folks.
The scope of the study was, as far as I know, never finalized, so we don't know exactly what it would get.
Patrick, would you be willing to take some of those, like you said, $500,000 is nothing, so to have the money be used better, would you be willing to take some of those things that most of us said are non-starters, and then just maybe focus on a couple of things and separate the bill? Would you be willing to maybe revise this thing a little?
I think, well, I'm not in a position to say I can authorize revising the report in and of itself, but I think based on the feedback, focus on the things that are achievable.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I just want to say, you did a lot of great work. It's
a lot of great work.
Everyone focused on like one thing. So.
Reggie, if there's anything
that's what I was trying to say,
that we
Reggie,
can do
down.
if Patrick said, if we can get sanitation, why can't we start with that? Why can't we start with, we already have districts through city planning. We have all these special districts set up. Let's try and use that to our advantage.
Sorry.
Let's ask a city.
All right, folks, I'm sorry. We have one more application, so we got to keep the meeting moving. I just want to invite our next applicant. Thank you, Patrick. I want to invite the next applicant who has an application for a newsstand on the corner or on Greenwich and Warren. So I think everyone should have their application. So, Mr. Patwari? Awesome. Okay, folks. Hey, sorry, folks. Just conversation. Sorry. Okay, so we're just gonna. Okay, perfect. So, folks, we're just gonna have Mr. Patwari give a presentation about a proposed newsstand in our district. So, yes, Mark.
Newsstand on the Warren Street between Greenwich and Westside Highway.
So it's on the southwest corner of Warren and Greenwich.
So it's on the school side of Warren Street.
On Warren Street is between Greenwich and West Street. But the building number is corner of the.
It's across from Holford, right?
Well, is it on the side of Whole Foods or is it on the side of the school?
Is it,
No, not
is it on, it's actually on Warren Street, is that what you're saying? It's on
Yeah,
Warren Street?
you see the 99 Warren Street like that.
is over there.
So, right, so the Whole Foods is right here, so,
Yeah.
right? That's the entrance, right?
So it's off the corner across
Yeah.
the street.
So it's on Warren, so it's basically on Warren Street itself?
Warren Street, yeah.
Okay. And so it's on Warren between Greenwich and West Broadway?
No, West Street, like
West.
West Side Highway.
Oh,
It's
I
up the
see.
corner from Manhattan.
Okay.
Oh, okay,
So you're
I
talking
see.
about the sidewalk along the side of Whole Foods before you get to the entrance of Bed Bath & Beyond and
Yes,
Barnes &
yes.
Noble?
Where's the dog run?
It's past there.
The dog run
Yeah,
is
it's right across
that
the
way
dog run,
and on
right?
the other side of the street. The dog run is behind the school. This is,
So behind the school, next to
This
the
is-
school.
It's before, exactly what
So
It's
he's
in
talking about-
Sambal Street.
he's talking about over here. You're talking about before the Barnes & Noble entrance, but after the Whole Foods entrance, right?
I think so, Tammy.
Yeah, that's, Tammy, the bottom right, that's the dog park right across the street there, you see that? And there's
Yeah.
Bob's place next to it.
Yeah,
The small town.
Are you talking about where the construction shed is still there?
No, construction is not, right now
That was
no,
a picture,
but
old picture.
have you talked to the people who live in the building there?
Yeah.
Isn't there a building right
Right there,
there?
the building entrance.
Yeah.
No, isn't that, there's a school.
No, the
school's across the street.
school's across the street.
Okay, I mean, those corners are really big and
Where's the closest newsstand to
folks,
that?
Sorry, folks. So first off, Dana's gonna pull up the Google Maps here. So first thing is, in terms of the nearest newsstand, one of the things from the application was that we generally asked for newsstands that are in the nearby area. There's a newsstand that's right around the corner on Greenwich.
And then Murray Street, we have one.
Yeah, so there's one on
We
Greenwich
took my
and
slow
Murray.
streets,
And so that's really
booklet.
close to this other newsstand.
No, this is the fully other side.
It's right around the block.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you don't want
it's
it?
basically half a block away, one block, maybe at
But
best.
transition is people
Can't
is
get up
there,
for a
right?
second.
And this transition is
Reggie, there's a lot of traffic there. I mean, there's also five
Okay, there you go.
guys there, and they're all busy.
Right.
Some,
That's a good, so you,
Further down the street. Sorry, Rich, before you.
right, yeah.
So just so I understand, Mr. Pedwar, so you have a nuisance facility right here, right in front of the GameStop. So basically,
What
right.
was
They
GameStop?
went out of business.
Oh, I know what happened. That's right,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean, right? So
Front of the
there was
Bank
the
of America
there was the T-Mobile or whatnot. So it's right there where that FedEx truck is. I guess it's right
Yep.
here. So that's where your newsstand that is. Do you own that newsstand as well, or do you own another newsstand?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's your newstand.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Are you moving
So
that
then-
one,
No,
or is that one
no.
staying?
So
Wait,
you're
so the one
looking
in front
to
of the
get a
T-Mobile
second
is
one.
yours as well?
Yeah. So then, so now you're looking to put the other one right here.
Yes.
Okay. So it's pretty close, right? Like it's.
It's not
Can you go
as
back in
close
time,
because
Diana?
People is going walking is there.
And see if there's maybe there's a map without, image without the construction, perhaps.
Such a classic.
In the
picture.
middle
There
of
we
the Warren Street, Greenwich and West Street.
Where do you wanna be?
Oh, the closest one.
Closest to
closest-
2018.
next one. Yeah, there. Yeah, let's see. A little clearer.
So.
That's an amazing asset.
Yeah, time travel.
You have it right here, and then you wanted to put it there. So.
Why so close?
Not so close, of the middle of it.
Oh, in the middle. Okay, in the middle
Middle.
of the street. Okay.
But that's where the sidewalk's only 8 feet, right?
So,
Can we talk about the sidewalk width? How width the.
and there's also there's the bus stop, and then there's two benches in between the tree pits. So, it looks to me like that proposed newsstand is right where one of the benches is.
And where the.
Isn't there a
connection-
bench?
No,
Not on the street, Tammy.
That's so far.
When,
He's not talking about on the street, he's talking about on the sidewalk.
it's in
And on
fact,
the sidewalk, there's the bus stop,
yeah,
and then
that's the
there's,
connection bus stop.
right, and it was, yeah.
right
If you
there.
go back to the
stop is
2014
other
photo, you
side.
can see him. See the bench? There's a bench right there.
Right there.
Can we
And
go
then
down
there's-
the street? Can we go further down the street? Just want to make sure, because you're saying, Mr. Redwire, it's further
No,
down.
this is,
There's the bus.
yeah, bus
Bus
stop
stop?
is here, is the.
Further up, further
Further
down?
down.
Oh, sorry, Dan, I think you can go scroll a little further down the street. Perfect.
Well,
Yeah, more.
More?
Yeah, more. Like that, this two cars, the black car, like that, yeah.
That's where the newsstand would be?
But there's an entrance to,
Yeah, that's.
Whole Food and.
no, not there. That's
Bed Bath,
Bed Bath and Beyond and,
yeah, there the Whole Food is meeting.
Permit building.
Whole Foods, well, the other way.
Whole Food is there.
no, Whole Foods has a Warren Street entrance.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Ms. Padua, there's some confusion here because according to the diagram you've submitted, it's only 25 feet from Greenwich Street is where your new stand would be. Was that right, 25?
No, maybe it's the mistake, I think more about.
25.
The 99 Warren Street is like about more than over here.
Okay, so there's some confusion about the diagram already.
Oh, I bet you he thinks that the food the entry, the second entry to the Whole Foods Market, it's 25 feet from there.
Oh, that's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Down the corner,
she's right.
the entry over there.
There's 3 entries too.
Okay, so go further down to where the entry of Soul Cycle is. Okay, that's 99 that you just passed.
Yeah, this is 99.
That's the Whole Foods entrance.
And that's, right, and that's the Whole Foods entrance. So you're talking about in between the Whole Foods entrance, over towards,
Yeah, it's like there.
there are the 2 mailboxes he's talking about.
Oh, okay, this makes a heck of a lot more sense now. All right.
Is that after the construction comes down? Or-
Yeah. Construction company.
It's still pretty tight.
So it's a newsstand directly outside Whole Foods.
I mean, good placement, but it's pretty tight.
And then how wide is the newsstand, Mr. Bud?
It depends. Sometimes it's the coming to the
In this case,
12
it's
by
about-
6. Sometimes it's 12 by.
In this case, it looks like it's 10 by 4. Is the
Yeah, 10 by 4.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
so
so-
just the way I understand this, so in terms of this, oh, Jesus,
Serves
this
its purpose.
is the sidewalk. Wait, Jesus.
It's
Can
a
you go
16-foot sidewalk,
It's a si-
4 and 10 or 14-foot sidewalk?
Is it a yeah?
It's a 14, it says
14
16
and a half
total.
foot.
It's 16 total. You're leaving 1.5 feet from the back of the newsstand to the curb
Okay.
and 10.6 to the,
That's 16 feet, that's how.
alright, can you go back to that photo,
Yeah, that
Diana?
doesn't seem like
So-
a 16.
So here's my,
No,
here's my only
it's 2
concern.
slabs, it's 2 slabs, 8 by 8.
Yeah,
There's a 4 by 4,
So-
which means it's 8.
here's my one concern, and I would wanna know how Whole Foods feels about this, only simply because, take a look at what that picture shows. That's
That
where
little-
Whole Foods,
little guy
now they
running.
do load and unload to the other side as well, but this is the delivery zone where they load deliveries out from there. So,
And they double
I
park
don't-
too, they shouldn't.
well, clearly, but I don't know if that would be a major impediment to their business. And considering how many supermarkets we don't have anymore in the neighborhood, I'd be a little concerned for that. Have you spoken to anybody at Whole Foods?
Tammy, do you think that Whole Foods would close their business if he opened up a?
Of course.
I don't think it would affect them one way, and I shop there too, but.
I think it's more of a congestion issue.
I'm looking
I
at
think
con-
that's all it really is. I look at it at least. I think
That's what I was thinking, is
Okay.
more congestion, because they're using that side as a loading zone.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of Whole Foods versus Mr. Patoir. We'd be on Mr. Patoir's side, but I think,
Yeah.
but all in all, I think it's more of a congestion.
What about the corner like that corner by Whole Foods, like there's, like, you know, there's a lot of space as opposed to the middle of the block, I think, is it?
No, because one newsstand is over here. Also, the ST is not a space here.
There's also the food vendor there.
Also,
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
The big problem is that the diagram is not correct.
It is correct.
The
He
sidewalk,
references the Whole
no,
Foods
no,
entrance.
no, the sidewalk is
25
not
feet
16 feet wide.
How do we check?
Well, can go back to,
And also he's
Go back
saying
to,
25 feet from
Google.
Greenwich Street.
and go back where there's no
25
find a
feet
picture
from
with
the
no
front-
scaffold.
From the door of,
Oh, from the door of Whole Foods? But even that's close.
folks, while we wait for does anyone else have any other questions for Ms. Patoir while we continue to? How long have you had the newsstand at the other location?
I get this one in 2011.
2011. Okay, great. So wow, so you've been here for 8 years. My goodness. Okay.
it's clean and
It
neat.
just it's really smart to put there because it's pretty high foot traffic areas.
Yeah.
Good for you, but
Yeah.
but I worry about the congestion, and I'm just curious why you wouldn't look at Chambers, which kind of has nothing over there, but a lot of
Samba?
with a lot
So-
of space.
Yeah,
And a lot of
So,
Samba Street. We
let me
have a lot.
see.
Where?
the Sambar Street and between Greenwich and West Street.
Usually,
So,
weird.
opposite of the school.
Usually these
talking
are.
like right
Oh,
before
he's
my-
right outside of pulling off Perez.
Oh.
Eight.
Oh, really?
Eight.
Yes,
Yeah, there's one over there.
But that's a portable trailer, right?
Yeah, we
Excuse me, excuse me, four.
Yeah.
4,
Jeez, man, how many
8,
trailers do you have?
9, 10, like 11 maybe. Yeah, these are general, this is kind of weird, it might be wrong generally, but these look like, these are usually 4x4.
Yeah.
I just think
So
it's too
it's
tight.
definitely not 16 feet. That's definite.
Yeah.
I just have a kind of general educational question. We are granting a space to a vendor. What does the vendor pay back to the city or to what, you know, how does it work?
Sure.
Is there a monthly, you pay a rent to the city or, you know, is it
I
free
pay that yearly.
Yearly.
So how much is it?
It's 30 something is the musician license, and it depends license. We have a cigarette license, a musician license. We have also the electronic cigarette license. So every year I pay that 30 something.
30. So for the newsstand license alone, how much is that?
Musician license is 1,000.
Okay.
1,000 something.
1,000?
1,000 something.
A year?
That's pretty reasonable to have
A year or a month?
And do you have, if we give it to you, are there other people that might be interested in having a newsstand there? Is this like a competitive thing?
He's the one that's
We
here.
just- That's,
No.
I mean,
I
that's
think
a
the good thing is-
question of
yeah.
process. I
Yeah,
mean,
so in terms of
if I
process-
said, wow, that's pretty cool.
Is there a limit, a geographic limit to how many?
So technically
vendors.
speaking, damn it, if I'm wrong, there's not a limit, however, the big however is, they're not an automatic as of right. It has to go through the Department of Consumer Affairs, which then goes to the community board. So for example, if Mr. Padwari wanted to put one, like, on the corner, like, 30 feet from his other one, I think we would all say, no,
No.
Mr. Padwari, that's not happening. In this case, I think, at least I know I'm more open to it than when I first heard about this, because it's more mid-block, so I know there's enough of a reasonable distance. So all in all, that's the general process, that there isn't a hard and fast rule about
So
how many.
the community board is the restriction zone.
Yeah, pretty much. So just my own personal thought, listen, I don't like saying no for a small, this is really effectively a small business, let's just face it. Clearly, I don't think, I personally don't care about the competition of Whole Foods, not saying anyone does say that, but I'm concerned about the congestion though, because I just know personally, and a lot of it's not your fault, but there's so much scaffolding there, right?
Yeah,
So
before
I know
the-
anytime I shop there and I'm trying to get out, I'm battling with people with strollers or getting on a Soul Cycle, and
Because
it's hard.
we have a scaffolding,
Because
that's
of the
why.
scaffolding, exactly.
Now
One
it's
is,
clear.
so the scaffolding has already been taken off?
Yeah,
Or no?
it's taken up. No,
Oh, it's not there anymore?
No.
Can you go?
I didn't realize. I thought it was
pretty recently.
Yeah, I saw this. Scaffold, no scaffold.
It just happened recently?
Yeah, maybe it's 1 month ago.
Oh, okay, all right.
I don't know. You should have taken pictures after.
Yeah.
It might have been
I
my
put the
presentation.
picture and I put it up on my.
I thought it was
Gotcha, okay. So,
But if he agreed to, whether it's there or not, if he agreed to wait till the scaffolding is down
Yeah.
before he would even put it up, would that make a difference in anybody's opinion?
oh, it made a big difference.
I'd be much happier.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I think that
so
might
it
be
seems fine.
a little, whatever you got, I forget what you call it, recommendation,
Yeah.
and whatever you say, yeah.
I would still wanna see what Whole Foods has to say and some of the residential neighbors before I can.
You care what Whole Foods has to say?
Yeah, I don't
But
care.
not, I mean, I don't care about Whole Foods, but the problem is the congestion with their unloading and unloading there at that location.
Mark, isn't it more like the unloading is on the other side around the corner, like on the?
I have like
there.
One is the no.
Okay, no problem, no problem, it's okay.
I'm not sure, Mark, I'm just asking you.
And I have a concern that the diagram is not accurate,
No,
as
Yes,
far,
it is.
It gets, it's.
that sidewalk is not 16 feet.
Oh, so they don't.
It is not
They
16
wait
feet.
for us.
It is
to-
not
yeah,
16
ask
feet.
us, And then they
Oh,
make
okay.
decisions, yeah.
Right, and the school
Okay.
across the street.
So,
You only need to walk down that street with your kid and the dog.
Yeah.
It's really narrow.
yeah, it is, so
People
that's a
punching each
concern.
other getting by.
That's a concern I have, is it's just, it's,
Here it's
30
12.
feet.
I mean, I want to support you as a small businessman and you know, I want to support you, but.
It's further down.
Alright,
This
folks,
is the
we
new block.
we have a lot of conversations going on, and I think we
Can
wanna
we
wrap this up.
verify how wide the
So,
sidewalk
yeah,
is?
so we're gonna verify that as well. Not to say we don't believe your architect or anything like that, but I don't think it's 16. That doesn't make any sense to personally just walking
not.
down that street. So we're gonna verify that. I think one thing I think we'll do on our end, and you should do this anyway, is we should just check with Whole Foods, not obviously for permission, but I'm curious how they're going to handle the loading and unloading component because they use that space right outside.
But Reggie, if, let's say Whole Foods says, we'd rather it not be there, should that affect our decision?
No.
Personally, no, it wouldn't affect
No.
mine.
You know they will say that.
Yeah, of course. I'm just curious to see how they're going to, like, where are they moving? I think it's just more for our own edification.
Somebody had mentioned that it was on the other side, and I'm not sure, like, I never take note where the deliveries
Yeah.
are, but, and does anybody know definitively whether if the deliveries come on the other side or not?
No, the deliveries, when they're outgoing, they take it out of that,
They
at
do
least what I've
both.
seen, they come out of that entrance we
But
just
I'm talking
saw.
about the delivery, the food to Whole Foods.
Oh, the food to Whole Foods,
That's the
yeah.
big delivery trucks.
Yeah, that I don't know.
They
I
have a
think it's
loading
done-
dock. They have a loading
One
dock.
side is it is the West Street, I think.
Plus
so.
personal vehicles
Okay.
unload there.
Yeah,
So we can ask them to come back with information before we vote.
On information on.
It's further
These
down.
questions
It's
is-
across the
Yeah,
bottom.
so folks, so one sec, really quick, just to clarify, so I think the one thing we have to verify is that it really is 16 feet, I think, but assuming that that's the case, because that's what the applicant is representing in the architect's diagram, the loading or unloading, I think it's just, for me, it's more curious, I don't think my decision is based on whether Whole Foods is cool with it, I'm just curious how they're gonna handle it.
I'm curious what the other businesses on the street think of it, so
Which other businesses?
the businesses on the street.
You mean like Bed Bath and Beyond, Tammy?
No, they're not gonna care.
Are one of those
They're
building
up there.
residents?
I was thinking more like,
Yeah.
like,
Isn't it the only business, Tammy, Bed Bath and Beyond?
no, there's a residential building a
That's
little
the
further
other one
down.
that's
Soul
not
Cycle.
concerned about.
And
Yeah.
a Soul Cycle and
Yeah.
Bob across the street.
Yeah, I'd
Because
like to get.
it seems
yeah.
like it's right across from the dog run. more or
Yeah,
less.
I'd like to get that information, particularly
Colin.
I think the
residential.
school would be
and-
okay.
Yeah, Colin,
See, I think we all agree we want to help this guy.
Yeah.
Expand his business and all
Yeah.
that. I do especially, but is there a way for
There's
him
one
to
a
come
block
back
away.
during this time with an alternate
There's-
location?
Put the dog on.
Just to save everyone some time?
I don't know, is there an alternative location on that block that you would consider be open to, or is this really the?
While we're looking at this.
Yeah, while we're looking at this.
Another side is no spaces here.
Gotcha, or how about elsewhere further down the block? Is there-
Yeah, little bit, maybe the change, maybe changes the little bit as the down.
Reggie, when you say further down, you mean
Past
towards
the
west or
mailbox.
towards
Towards
Greenwich?
west,
Yeah.
towards
Maybe in
west.
front of Bed Bath instead of in front of Whole Foods.
Maybe.
No, this isn't in front of Whole Foods. You gotta remember, that's the side entrance
right,
to
right,
Whole
right.
Foods.
Okay.
That's not the corner, that's the side. He doesn't, that map is not accurately reflective.
Back.
Yeah, the concern I have about voting on this tonight and approving it
Yeah.
is that this is
That's
not
not
accurate.
right.
And he needs to come back with accurate representation, maybe even a rendering. And then we can find out what Whole Foods, whatever, but mostly the residents have to say about it. And I cannot support it at this moment.
I think,
That's my opinion.
I think if
And
that-
Diana, is there anything like on a hearing on the clock for this, or can he come back
They're
next month?
actually extending our comment period,
Yeah.
so we have enough time to review it in April, so
All right.
unfortunately, we're in kind of a tight window.
So when is the
the problem is that map's not anywhere near
Yeah.
correct.
Can I just
Because
finish
if
on
it
this
really,
point? I just finish on this point?
Sorry,
About, so if the applicant agrees, then we can send a email to, Consumer Affairs that not to take action until next month.
Sure.
Okay, all right,
If
okay.
it's a-
We can make that request,
Yeah.
but
So if he
they're-
agrees.
I
Right.
think you get
That's
the
in-
sense we all wanna be helpful to you, but there are some concerns, cause I don't think we think the map here is 100% accurate, and we just have to make sure. The other thing we wanna do is we wanna check with the neighbors to make sure there are no objections there. Like I said, no one here is holding off Whole Foods or anything like that, we wanna be helpful, we just have some extra diligence, so, Dana has already talked to the agency, to say we need a little more time. Can you wait until, the end of May to get the approval? Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can-
okay,
Can you
Could-
come next month with more accurate maps?
yeah.
I mean, diagrams,
Yeah.
so.
And
And
what
a rendering.
I can make sure you do is that you're
Yeah.
first on the agenda, so you're not waiting 2.5
Yeah.
hours.
Reggie, also,
Ma-
You just
Hey.
contact with my attorney,
Okay.
he can do.
maybe bring
Okay,
Tammy.
alright, so sorry, Tammy's been patiently waiting, sorry.
so sir, what you need to do to go back to be very clear with your people is on this map, he shows Granite Street. If-
Yeah, this is the little bit, he.
Hold on.
But I think it's
Wait,
going to
wait,
the
wait.
back.
Okay, what's up?
Wait.
What's other, yeah,
Listen to what I'm saying. It shows Whole Foods entry and Greenwich Street. That indicates that you're at the corner.
Right.
If that indicates that you're at the corner, then there's no way we would approve it because you're by the bus stop or replacing a bench. If it's mid-block, he needs to then show West Street on the other side and show the measurement from West Street up.
And all
how
the street,
far he is.
and all the street furniture that's
Also,
there.
is the DOT is going the there, then maybe is he moving the back DOT?
He's not moving DOT.
Yeah,
Hard to read.
Yeah,
No, no,
so,
it's
yeah, so
impossible.
here show we're saying that the map is hard to read and you have to show the full street, so
Tammy,
you
what
should show
about showing where the
Greenwich
bus stop
and
is
you
on
should
the
show
rendition?
west.
I suppose
Well, but if
you
he's
know
at West Street, there's no bus
99
stop.
Warren Street?
Yeah,
Okay.
If he's at
99
Greenwich,
Warren
there's a
Street
bus
is
stop.
more than
But
the
he
middle.
should- He should put the bus stop on
But
the
he
picture.
shows the
so maybe
99
it's-
Warren
as
Street,
close
but
to
it's
Greenwich.
in the- yeah.
Yeah, so we need a
Map
new
is
map.
close to the
Yeah, we need a new map, and if anything, if me or Devin can go, sorry,
I mean,
volunteer,
Reggie, I would
we'll
think
do
there's
that.
more foot traffic closer to Greenwich than closer to West Street.
I would think so too, as well. Okay,
Well, there is a lot of foot traffic there.
there's a lot,
Yeah.
yeah.
Lot of foot traffic.
Sorry, Betty is, sorry,
I go here all the time, and I can tell you often I can't get through down that street.
Mhm.
It isn't wide enough to let me through.
yeah,
And as far as traffic, yes, there is a lot of foot traffic, because you have all the students from Manhattan Community College, as well as Stuyvesant, who come to eat at Whole Foods. And so there's a lot of movement,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of families that are 3 and 4 people across. You'd be squeezing all of these people.
And the Soul Cycle
Plus,
games.
the doors coming out of Whole Foods, you can say what you want about you don't care about Whole Foods. People in my building get the food delivered, and they bring it out in grocery carts for making local deliveries.
Mhm.
And they stock them at those
Right
doors
there.
along that street.
gotcha.
So that takes up square footage out
Yeah.
on the sidewalk as well. And you can't stop their home
Yeah.
deliveries.
I hear you loud and clear in that. Colin?
Just my last point.
Yeah, yeah,
Instead of like
last one, yeah.
getting buy-in from